You already had the divorce papers ready? How's that? I scared you, didn't I? Because I'm ready for this at any time. So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said. With that, my husband Lance got up and went into his room. My name is Alice, a 28-year-old office worker. I married Lance a year ago after meeting him on a blind date. He pursued me, and after a year and a half of dating, we decided to tie the knot. In hindsight, it may have been too soon, but I had always vaguely envisioned getting married and starting a family by the time I was 30, so I accepted his proposal. But I quickly realized that I should have been more cautious about such life-changing decisions. The first red flag came when Lance abruptly announced he was changing jobs right after we got married. "I'm changing jobs," he said, completely out of the blue. "Why so suddenly?" I asked, trying to understand his reasoning. "Because I can't show my full potential there," he replied confidently. I was taken aback, wondering what he meant. He informed me that he had already submitted his resignation and would be leaving his job at the end of the month. Although he was able to secure a new position, the salary was significantly lower than what he had been earning before. At the time, I thought it would be okay since I was also working, but then came the next surprise. Lance started pressuring me to quit my job. If Lance's new salary had been sufficient to cover our living expenses, I might have considered it, but with his recent job change and reduced income, quitting my job would have left us in a precarious financial situation. Despite Lance's assurances that his salary would soon increase, there was no clear timeline for when that would happen. Without my income, we wouldn't be able to save any money, and we'd struggle to cover basic expenses like rent and car maintenance. So I told Lance, "I won't quit my job until your salary goes up." Lance seemed to agree, but he kept asking me to quit, bringing it up repeatedly. Each time, I gave him the same response. A year into our marriage, his salary still hadn't increased, yet he continued to ask, "When are you going to quit?" I was tempted to sarcastically say, "Now," but I couldn't, not yet. If he wanted me to quit so badly, he needed to focus on earning more. Instead, he should concentrate on his work rather than persistently pressuring me. I began to wonder why Lance was so eager for me to quit my job, and eventually, I realized it. Lance wanted me to take care of his mother, Sarah. Whenever we visited my in-laws, Lance would say, "I just want to make things easier for you, Mom," and Sarah would respond, "Thank you, Lance. That's very kind of you." Lance would then glance at me, silently pressuring me to quit my job. He claimed his mother needed care, but the truth was Sarah wasn't ill at all. She was healthy, active, and financially independent, earning enough from her part-time job to enjoy her hobbies and social life. She didn't need my help at all. If I were Sarah, I'd be insulted by the notion that I needed to be taken care of when I was perfectly capable of taking care of myself. But Lance still insists that I should take care of his mother, Sarah. "Oh, if only one of us were home during the day, we could check on Mom every day," Lance blurts out, clearly expecting me to be that person. It's tiresome to keep hearing this, but I finally ask, "Sarah is in perfect health. What exactly do you want me to do?" "There's plenty you could do," Lance responds, almost as if it's obvious. "You could help with the housework, run errands for her. There's always something that needs doing." But Sarah has a part-time job and spends a lot of time socializing with her friends. She's not even home most of the day, I point out. "Even if Mom's not home, you could still do the housework, couldn't you?" he counters. What? Is he serious? "So, you want me to be her housekeeper?" It's becoming increasingly clear that Lance just wants to look good in front of his parents, to appear like the dutiful son. If he cares so much about taking care of them, he should be the one doing the housework. I have no patience for Lance's superficial pride. Naturally, I didn't quit my job, and I certainly didn't start visiting my in-laws daily. I'd only went over during holidays like New Year's. Thinking back, Lance has always been like this when we visit his parents. He would order me around, telling me to clean up, help Mom, or see if there's anything we need from the store. But I never took the initiative to do these things. When I pushed back, saying, "Don't you know this area better than I do? You should go to the store," he would always reply, "It doesn't count if I do it." What does that even mean? I'm starting to realize that it's not about caring for his parents at all. Lance just wants to boss me around to make himself feel good by appearing like the ideal son. Is he really more concerned with looking good than with actually caring about me? That's how I'm beginning to see him. When I boldly asked him, "Why don't you try helping out or quit your job to take care of your own mother?" Lance looked visibly uncomfortable, his face twisting in disgust. "That's not something I'm supposed to do," he retorted. "I'm giving you these instructions so that my mom will see you as a considerate and useful wife. You should appreciate how kind I am to you." So, in other words, he wants to dump all the inconvenient responsibilities on me while pretending he's doing something extraordinary. Well, I'm not your servant, your slave, or anything else. I certainly don't deserve to be belittled or treated like this in front of my in-laws. If Lance keeps making these unreasonable demands, I won't stay silent. I'll push back. But Lance remained the same, never changing his stance. He kept asking, "When are you going to quit your job?" And every time we visited his parents, he would order me around just like before. I had reached the end of my patience, so I decided it was time to have a serious conversation with my husband. "What do you mean, talk?" he asked, clearly annoyed. "I think we need to talk about our future," I replied. "Huh? What are you even trying to say?" he scoffed. "I'm honestly fed up, Lance. I'm fed up with you constantly asking me when I'm going to quit my job and pressuring me to take care of your mother." "Why are you fed up with that? You're my wife, and it's your duty to take care of your husband's parents," he shot back as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Don't you think that's a huge burden on me? Isn't it your responsibility as her biological child to help with the housework and care for your own parents?" I asked, trying to make him see reason. "No way," Lance snapped. "It's the wife's duty to do that. Are you really the kind of person who doesn't care about her family? I'm disappointed you'd even say such a thing." "Then let me ask you this," I countered. "How have you been taking care of my parents? If I asked you to take care of them, would you do it?" Lance looked at me blankly. "What are you saying? Why should a husband take care of his wife's parents?" "So that means you haven't been and won't take care of my parents?" I asked, feeling my frustration growing. "The husband's parents and the wife's parents are completely different," he replied, as if that explained everything. "What difference does it make? I don't understand," I said, exasperated. "I can't believe you're this clueless," Lance sneered. "It's like I'm talking to my old boss or something." "What are you trying to say?" I pressed. "I'm saying the husband's parents should always come first. The wife's parents should be your responsibility," he declared, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "What they?" So, in Lance's mind, the only family that matters is the one he's biologically related to. "I'm so disgusted by you," I snapped. "I'm not going to your parents' house anymore." "Huh? Why would you do that?" Lance asked, clearly taken aback. "Enough is enough. I'm tired of this," I retorted, my frustration boiling over. "No way. How dare you talk back like that?" Lance shot back, his voice rising. "My mom was right." "What do you mean, your mom was right?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "She said you're a badly behaved wife," Lance sneered. "That's why she gave me this." With that, he pulled a piece of paper out of his bag. It was divorce papers. "What? You already had the divorce papers ready?" I asked, shocked. Lance looked disturbingly proud of himself. "How's that? I scared you, didn't I? I'm ready for this at any time," he said smugly. "So you better cool down and reflect on what you just said." With that, Lance got up and went into his room, leaving me standing there in disbelief. No way. Why is Lance so selfish? And that triumphant look on his face, it's as if he thinks these divorce papers are some kind of weapon to make me submit to his will. The fact that Sarah had prepared the divorce papers made everything even clearer. Lance is nothing more than a mama's boy, eager to do whatever Sarah says while trying to boss me around. You've got to be kidding me. There's no way I'm letting Lance control me like this. Does he not realize that by pulling a stunt like this, he's already ended our marriage? His complete lack of common sense only makes me more determined. Lance had already filled out the divorce papers and handed them to me with the witness section signed by Sarah and his friends. It was obvious he was just waiting for me to fall in line. But instead, the next day, after Lance left for work, I filled out the rest of the divorce papers and submitted them to the city office. Just to be safe, I'd also filed a notice of non-acceptance of the marriage certificate, ensuring that there would be no way to reverse this decision. I called my parents to explain the situation because I knew Lance, who had given me the divorce papers as a threat, might try to file the marriage certificate on his own if he found out I had already submitted the divorce papers. My parents were shocked that I had gone through with the divorce so quickly, but were even more outraged by Lance's behavior. They immediately offered to help me move my belongings. I took a paid leave and had my parents come over while Lance was at work. Together, we moved everything out to my parents' house. I decided to stay with them for a while, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of comfort and peace. Looking back, Lance never did any housework. I was the one cooking dinner after a full day at work, cleaning, and doing laundry on my days off. On top of all that, he expected me to take care of his parents, which was simply unreasonable. That night, my phone rang. It was Lance, who must have just returned home. "Hello?" "Hey, where are you right now?" Lance demanded. "I'm at my parents' house," I replied calmly. "What? Why the hell would you go back to your parents' house without my permission? And where's all your stuff? Don't tell me you're staying there overnight." He sounded panicked. I almost laughed. How could he not realize I had taken most of my belongings with me? The fact that he thought I was just staying overnight spoke volumes about his selfishness. "I moved out," I stated firmly. "I'm not coming back." "Huh? What the hell are you talking about? Come back here and make me some food," Lance demanded, his voice rising in frustration. "You could prepare it yourself," I said, and without waiting for a response, I hung up the phone. I knew I couldn't have a rational conversation with Lance about the divorce if he was going to be like this, so I decided to block his number and wait for him to come to me. A week later, Lance finally lost his patience and showed up at my parents' house. But he didn't come alone. He brought his parents with him. All three of them looked grim as they entered the living room. We sat facing each other, 3 against 3. "How could you do this?" Lance started, his voice laced with indignation. "I can't believe you would leave for such a long time without my permission." "That's because you were treating me like your personal housekeeper," I replied calmly. "All I asked was for you to take care of my family." Lance shot back as his parents, especially Sarah, glared at me. "Don't twist things to suit your convenience," I countered. "You've been forcing me to handle everything you don't want to deal with." "I've told you over and over, that's not what I meant," Lance insisted, but his words rang hollow. Sarah jumped in, her voice sharp. "What kind of wife are you? Lance has done so much for you." My father, who had been sitting quietly, began to tremble with anger. Sensing that he might lose his temper, I spoke up before things could escalate. "Lance told me to quit my job and take care of Sarah. He said it was my duty as his wife," I explained. "But when it comes to my family, he pushes all the responsibility onto me alone. In the end, Lance just wants me to obey him, take care of his parents, and let him take credit for it. He even told me that his parents were more important than mine, and that they should always be the priority." I could see the surprise on my father-in-law Robert's face. He looked at Lance, clearly taken aback. It was evident that Robert hadn't heard any of this before. "And to top it off," I continued, "Lance suddenly pulled out divorce papers, claiming it was Sarah's idea." "What?" Robert turned to Sarah, his tone questioning. "Did you really suggest that to Lance?" Sarah hesitated, flustered. "Well, it's just that Alice has been so difficult." "And did you really say that Alice's parents aren't a priority?" Robert pressed. Lance stammered, Well, it's just normal for your own parents to come first, right?" "Don't be ridiculous," Robert snapped. "I came here because I thought you were facing unreasonable hardships, but from what I'm hearing, you're the one at fault. Don't be a coward and try to use your parents' influence to get your way." Lance shrank under his father's rebuke. Robert had said everything I had wanted to say to Lance and more. He then turned to me and my parents, offering a sincere apology. "I'm sorry, Alice," he said, his voice full of regret. "And to you both as well," he added, nodding to my parents. "I am truly sorry for the trouble my foolish son has caused you," Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. "I will give him a strict lecture." "Robert, you're not at fault here," I replied gently. "Please don't blame yourself, and thank you for your kind words." I took a deep breath. "But there's one more thing I need to say." Lance, sensing something serious, asked, "What do you mean?" "The divorce papers you gave me," I began. "I've already filed them. We're no longer married." "What? No. Lance and Sarah both turned pale, shock washing over their faces. "How could you do that without my permission?" Lance sputtered. "You told me I could file them whenever I wanted," I reminded him, my voice steady. "You even had Sarah sign the witness section for you." Lance stammered, "But that was just to scare you." Robert's face darkened with anger as he turned to his son. "So you used it to threaten her?" I spoke up, echoing Robert's frustration. Exactly. He thought he could intimidate me. How could you be so foolish? Robert snapped, his patience finally snapping. He struck Lance on the cheek, causing Sarah to gasp in shock. I'm sorry you had to witness that, Robert said, turning back to me, his voice filled with remorse. You were right to divorce this idiot. I apologize on Lance's behalf for ruining your marriage. Robert then grabbed Lance by the collar and demanded, You and Sarah better apologize too. They both muttered apologies before Robert led them out of the house. I felt a wave of relief. Robert had saved my parents from losing their temper, and later he ensured that all of Lance's property went to me in exchange for no alimony. Lance didn't dare defy his father, so I ended up with all our savings and other assets from the marriage. Though I had a higher income and was the one managing the household, Robert's intervention ensured that the division was fair, and I couldn't thank him enough. I later heard that Robert was so disgusted with Sarah's involvement that he divorced her as well. Recently, I ran into a former colleague of Lance's who told me that Lance wasn't good at his job and was constantly reprimanded by his boss. Apparently, Lance had quit out of spite and switched jobs. I hadn't known about this, and it only reinforced my belief that Lance had blamed everyone else for his own shortcomings. He wasn't making much money at his new job, so I'm grateful I left him when I did. I've since rented a cozy one-bedroom apartment and have been living comfortably on my own. Work is going well, and I even got a raise recently. I'm not interested in relationships right now. I'm focused on my career and personal growth. Looking back, it was clear that Lance was more concerned with appearances than with actually improving himself. He could only maintain his dignity at home, but not in the real world. There are so many men like him who think divorce papers can be used as a threat, believing they hold all the power. But that's a huge mistake. I hope anyone in a similar situation finds the strength to break free, just like I did. And I hope Alice finds someone wonderful in the future. Thank you for reading until the end. Please subscribe to our channel and see you in the next video.
Meet Jody, a 29-year-old who's been working from home for 3 years. Before this setup, she held a consulting position at a major corporation, overseeing online operations. The decision to transition to remote work came unexpectedly when she found out she was pregnant. Opting for freelancing, she bid farewell to her corporate role, embracing the flexibility it offered. With her knack for marketing, she's been successfully managing various projects and directing online operations, bringing in a decent income. However, her husband, Huey, remains somewhat oblivious to the nature and value of her work, seeing it merely as a pastime. The shift to working remotely granted Jody the luxury of time, allowing her to experience a serene pregnancy and safely deliver their daughter, Caddy. Initially, Jody stayed with her parents for support during the first month after Caddy's birth. However, Huey's insistence on her return prompted her to shorten her stay to just a month. Since then, she's been navigating the delicate balance between work and childcare, managing adequately but not without its challenges. Unexpectedly, Olivia, her mother-in-law, proposed the idea of living together. Despite initial reservations about the potential complexities, Jody agreed on the condition of building a duplex to maintain some level of autonomy. The construction proceeded smoothly, and soon they moved into the new home, sharing common spaces. While initially pleased with the arrangement, Jody's contentment soon turned to frustration as Olivia began to impose various household tasks on her, often disrupting her work. Olivia's demands grew incessant, leaving Jody little room to focus on her professional responsibilities. Even when Jody voiced her concerns to Q, she found little support, with him dismissing her grievances and insisting she comply with his mother's requests. This lack of understanding and support from her husband only added to Jody's stress, pushing her mental and physical well-being to its limits. "I'm working hard and you're just playing. That's pathetic." With every complaint I voiced, Huey's attacks escalated, dismissing my efforts as nothing more than play. Even when I insisted that I was seriously working, he refused to believe me. Cody, my father-in-law, seemed to echo Huey and Olivia's sentiments, viewing working from home as little more than a hobby. Their lack of trust in my work left me questioning my own worth, fearing abandonment due to my perceived inadequacy. Then one day, when Hugh was off work and everyone was home, I had Caddy lying next to me as I worked. Huey barged into the room with a loud noise, demanding I come to my parents-in-law's room immediately. Ignoring Caddy's cries and leaving her behind, he must have known she was there. Was the loud noise really necessary? Doubting the sensibility of Huey and my parents-in-law, who interrupted my work, I picked up the crying Caddy and went downstairs. Entering the living room, I found the parents-in-law and Huey chatting happily. Perhaps I had reached my limit of irritation. Anger started to bubble up inside me. "What is it?" I asked quietly, sitting down with Caddy in my arms. The parents-in-law and Huey continued whispering to each other, their secretive behavior unsettling. Patiently, I waited for them to start the conversation. Then Olivia coughed exaggeratedly and glared at me with surprising words. "You leave this house," she said abruptly. I was confused by Olivia's statement. Did she mean for me to temporarily return to my parents' house? "What do you mean?" I asked, trying to remain calm. Olivia snorted and crossed her arms arrogantly. Even as I looked to Hugh for an explanation, he only smiled continuously. Was he mad, or was it me who was losing it? Why, I wondered. I needed to understand the reason calmly, so I first turned to Olivia and asked her why she said that. Olivia's eyes lit up as if she was glad I asked, and with a smile similar to Hughie's, she began to rant about how inadequate I was. "Every day you neglect housework, let Caddy cry incessantly, and just play with your computer and mobile phone. I don't know if you're relying on Hughie's salary, but you never listen to advice, just like a parasite," Olivia continued, laughing heartily as if she found it amusing. "I apologize for the housework, but I'm doing the basics. I also take good care of Caddy. She's quite a quiet child." I countered Olivia's accusations as much as possible. I can't just let go of my computer and mobile phone. I'm working. Isn't that understandable? Then Huey glared at me. "Are you cheating or what?" he accused, and I stared back at him bewildered by his baseless accusation. "Yes, Jody is cheating," Olivia joined Huey, pointing at me with a look of disgust. I was appalled at their audacity. "I'm not cheating." "I can show you my mobile phone right now," I said, taking out my phone to prove my innocence. But Huey just scoffed at it. "Anyone can deceive with that. Can't trust you," he said dismissively. Realizing arguing was pointless, I put away my phone for now. "We don't need someone like you. Parasites should move out immediately," Olivia continued to berate me. "Move out quickly," she continued. I started to feel like maybe leaving with my daughter was the only option. However, there was one reason I couldn't decide to leave just yet: the duplex house. I was the one who paid for it, went to the construction company repeatedly, and was particular about the interior and exterior. Therefore, I couldn't just easily say, "Yes, sure," and leave this place. Moreover, the mortgage is still in my name, and I doubt Huey's salary alone could cover our living expenses. If I leave, my income goes too. "Are you sure he can manage?" I gave them one last chance to reconsider, but Huey scoffed. "What income of yours? Don't make me laugh. We've been living off my salary alone until now." His ignorance made me feel almost sorry for him. I sighed deeply and turned to Olivia. "Hugh is quite a handful, even more than a 6-month-old daughter. Will you be taking care of him?" "Huey is high maintenance. He needs his towel, underwear, and pajamas ready after his bath, his shoes polished daily, his shirts ironed, suits deodorized, and wrinkle-free. If his morning coffee strength is slightly off, he loses his temper like a madman." I doubted Olivia could handle such a needy Huey. I asked, offering Olivia a chance. "I can do a better job than you. Who's just been playing around?" she scoffed. "Besides, if you leave, Huey already has someone else in mind." Olivia, looking pleased, said something that she shouldn't have to hear. "What do you mean?" I didn't miss a beat and turned my gaze to Hugh and Olivia. Olivia showed a look of regret and hastily averted her eyes. Hugh glared at Olivia. "Why did you say that?" he whispered in a low voice. "Explain what's going on." From their reactions, I gathered that Huey might have another woman. I glared intensely at Huey, prompting him to speak uncomfortably. Apparently, according to Huey, for several months, he's been seeing a woman named Carol, a young lady in her early 20s who fell for Huey at first sight during a business encounter. After her advances, they started dating. Carol is beautiful, graceful, and has a wonderful personality, Hugh says with a laugh. I couldn't believe it considering Huey's looks. I couldn't fathom why such a young woman would be interested in him. Half believing, I asked Hugh for proof, thinking if it's true, I'd secure compensation. Hugh showed me his WhatsApp history with Carol, and as expected, the messages were mostly from Huey, suggesting dates and compliments. However, Carol seemed disinterested in anything beyond work, politely declining personal interactions. Moreover, she typically responded formally, with no stamps or anything, just simple replies. Stunned by Huey's smug face, I was at a loss for words. I took screenshots of the conversation, transferred them to my phone without permission, and saved them. You never know when they might serve as evidence. Then I'll leave. With all that had transpired, my affection for Huey had cooled off entirely, and I didn't care what happened to them anymore. I'll take Caddy with me, I declared as Huey and the parents-in-law seemed pleased with my decision to leave. Huey's face turned serious, and his raised hands fell. What are you talking about? You can't raise Caddy without any income. That's right, leave Caddy here. Don't be silly, Hugh, and the parents-in-law didn't understand why I needed to take her with me. As far as I'm concerned, I don't understand why I should leave my daughter in such a place. I've told you I have an income, and why would I leave her with people who can't even take proper care of her? When Caddy grows up, she'll work hard, and I'll relax. Hugh interrupted with his nonsensical talk as I was explaining why I wouldn't leave Caddy. My anger was building. He kept spouting selfish things, not realizing he's digging his own grave. He even plans to use our daughter as a tool. Very well then, let's decide the custody through court. Please prepare a lawyer. Until then, I'll take care of her. But I knew that arguing here would only complicate things further with Huey and the parents-in-law, with unwavering confidence that I wouldn't lose. Once they agreed to legal proceedings, I wasted no time in preparing to leave immediately. Over the next few days, I never left my daughter's side, making all the necessary arrangements. I visited the construction company that had helped build the house and explained everything. I asked if they knew any good real estate agents to sell the house. Nick, the president of the construction company, became my ally, assuring me they'd handle everything. They quickly arranged for the sale, and to my surprise, due to the house's recent construction, pristine condition, and excellent location, it sold for far more than I expected. Simultaneously, they found an apartment for my daughter and me, a great place at the lowest price due to my budget considerations. I expressed my gratitude and began preparing to move immediately. Oh, have you already found a place? While packing my dishes in the living room, Olivia asked with a laugh. Yes, I responded briefly, feeling no need to elaborate. It'll be lonely without you, she said with a big laugh as she walked away. As unpleasant as she was, I looked around. The sofa and dining table I had bought were too large for the apartment, so I decided to sell them. Next was the refrigerator, which I also bought. It was slightly large, but I decided to take it with me and marked it with a sticker. I put stickers on all the furniture and appliances I had bought and wanted to take, and took photos of the items I didn't need with my mobile phone. On moving day, I purposely chose a day when the parents-in-law and Huey were away. Huey was at work, and the parents-in-law were called away to a community gathering. With the divorce papers Huey had given me in hand, I worked with the movers to transport my belongings. I had the construction company arrange for a waste removal service to pick up the unwanted furniture and other items. I steadily progressed with the move, and everything was finished within 2 hours. A few hours later, I left the house with Caddy. As I arranged things in the apartment, the phone rang. It was Olivia. It was already 5 in the evening. I had left before noon, so she must have just realized. I answered the call. Jody, what's this about the house being empty? Over the phone, Olivia seemed quite flustered, yelling loudly. Ah, those things were mine. I disposed of the ones I didn't need. What are you talking about? I replied calmly, "Well, I bought them. I have receipts and other proofs of purchase, so there's no point in complaining," I said with a laugh, leaving Olivia seemingly at a loss for words, raised in nonsensical uproar. "Oh, and I sold the house, so please vacate within a month," I added cheerfully. Olivia sounded even more astonished. "Why would you do that? Since I built the house, it's in my name and I've been paying the mortgage, so I decided to do as I pleased. So that's that," I stated firmly, and Olivia was still trying to say something, but I hung up the phone. After that, I received numerous calls from the parents-in-law and Huey, but I ignored them all. I needed to arrange the apartment quickly for Caddy's sake and had no time for distractions. I also consulted with a lawyer, and we agreed all future communications would go through them. Months later, after repeated negotiations, I easily won custody of Caddy. The reasons were simple. I had ample financial resources. I had been the one caring for Caddy all along, and working from home allowed me to spend more time with her. Huey, who had assumed he would naturally win custody, was shocked and bitterly spat, "I don't need such a girl anyway," before storming off. Relieved that I could finally live peacefully with my daughter, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. After I left, the parents-in-law and Huey hadn't left yet. What should I do? I received a call from the president of the construction company. I simply replied, "Please evict them," and the president, knowing the situation and seemingly amused, laughed heartily and said, "Leave it to me," before hanging up. I don't know exactly how the formidable-looking president persuaded Hugh and the parents-in-law to leave, but I can't imagine. A few days later, I received a report that they've moved out, and I was impressed by the efficiency. Even that brought relief to my heart. But several months after the divorce, Hugh contacted me. By then, the divorce was final, and the parents-in-law had somewhat given up, so I hadn't blocked his number. But I immediately regretted not changing my mobile phone number or maintaining the block. "Ah, long time. I was just thinking maybe you were starting to miss me by now," he said. What is he talking about? I felt more liberated than ever after the divorce, not having to care for him. I listened as Huey continued speaking. He was apparently dumped by Carol and had thought I was his only option. The way he was dumped was laughable. He went to Carol right after our divorce, saying, "We can be together right away." When he told her, "You don't flatter yourself," she responded very coldly, misinterpreting her professional demeanor at the workplace. Hugh visited her at home, resulting in a restraining order from the police. Hugh claimed, "Carol betrayed me. I dumped that woman." But frankly, I had no interest in his story. I hung up the phone while he was still talking and immediately blocked him. I blocked all messages and later changed my phone number, starting anew. I heard from mutual friends that after the incident with Carol, Huey had disputes with clients and was negatively affected at work. Perhaps feeling too uncomfortable, he resigned. Unable to secure another job, he seemed to be struggling financially, constantly asking various people for loans. The parents-in-law are probably taking care of him, but I imagine his modest income is hardly sufficient for a stable life. As for me, I'm living a fulfilling life with Caddy, dedicating my presence solely to her, which brings me the utmost happiness.
My name is Molly, and I'm 32 years old. I'm married to Justin, who is 35 and works in an office. I work as a freelance fashion designer from home. My career started with many small, exciting projects, but it wasn't until I landed a significant project with a substantial paycheck that things really changed. This opportunity allowed Justin and me to move into a luxurious high-rise apartment, something I had always wanted. Since I was the one who had dreamed of living in such a place, I agreed to cover the monthly rent myself. Justin was thrilled about the new apartment, and I thought our future together looked bright. I couldn't have anticipated what was about to happen next. One day, Justin brought his 65-year-old mother, Betty, to our place. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago, and she had been living alone since then. "Hi, Molly," Betty greeted me. "Hi, Betty, it's been a while. What's going on?" "Well," Justin began awkwardly, "she wants to move in with us." "Why?" I asked, surprised. Justin explained that Betty's house was deteriorating, and she wanted to move to a better place. She didn't have much money, so she hoped to stay with us temporarily. I understood the situation but wasn't thrilled about it. Our apartment was a haven for just the two of us, and Betty, whom I barely knew, felt like a stranger. I was reluctant to have her join us. "Please," Justin said, taking my hands. "Her house is falling apart. I promise I'll urge her to find a smaller, newer place as soon as possible." Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it would only be for a short while. A month later, Betty moved in. "Thank you so much for letting me stay in this wonderful apartment," she said. "No problem," I replied with a forced smile. "Please make yourself at home." But soon after settling in, Betty approached me with an unexpected request. "Sorry to dive right in, but may I borrow some money?" I was taken aback. As soon as she had unpacked her things, she was asking me for money. I was taken aback by Betty's directness. "I've been seeing the doctor a lot lately, and it's been costing me money. I just need a little bit, please." "How much are you asking for?" I inquired. "Around $300 for now," she said. Given her age, it wasn't surprising that she might be facing health issues, and I could understand that medical expenses could add up quickly. I reached into my purse, found $650, and handed it to her. Then, one day, Justin came to me with a request. I was unsettled, fearing it might be related to Betty. "You know, we should get a new car," he said. I was so surprised that I nearly fell out of my chair. "What do you mean? We just bought a car 2 years ago." "Well, it's too small," Justin explained. I couldn't understand why the size of the car mattered. It was sufficient for the two of us, or 3 if you counted Betty. Why did the size need to change? "My mom doesn't like it," Justin added. I was baffled. Why was Betty complaining about a car that wasn't hers? "She wants a more luxurious car, like a Mercedes," Justin said. I was completely lost. Changing cars for such a trivial reason seemed unreasonable. Besides, could Betty even drive? "I'm not buying an expensive car. Tell her it's not happening," I said firmly. At the time, it was clear to me that this request made no sense. Betty's complaints about the car seemed to never end, and soon she came to me again, asking for money. "My medical bills have become more expensive, and I'm falling behind on payments. Could you help me out again?" she pleaded. "Should I be concerned about your health?" I asked, worried. Betty hesitated before responding. "Not really. I'm just feeling a bit depressed and having trouble sleeping. The therapist is quite costly. I'm really sorry for asking." "I understand. How much do you need this time?" I asked. "About $1,000, she said. $1,000? I was taken aback. The amount seemed excessive for therapy, though I wasn't well versed in the costs. "I'm sorry," I said, "but my insurance only covers a limited number of sessions fully, and after that, I have to pay half of the charges." "I see," Betty replied. "I'll get it by tomorrow." Despite my shock at the amount, I tried to rationalize it, thinking perhaps there were high costs associated with the therapy. Even after that, Betty continued to find reasons to borrow more money, citing medical bills and transportation costs for visiting sick friends. By the time I realized, the total amount she had borrowed had reached $5,000. Although my job was going well, I was becoming increasingly frustrated. That's when I noticed something strange. One day, I couldn't help but peek into Betty's room. To my shock, I found designer bags and wallets neatly displayed on a shelf. I was stunned. How could she afford such luxurious items when she claimed to be struggling financially? She had borrowed so much money from me. Yet her room was filled with expensive goods. I grew increasingly suspicious of the medical bills she'd been asking for. A month later, Betty approached me again, asking for more money with no hint of remorse. "Can you please wait?" she said casually. I decided it was time to confront her. I called Justin, who seemed unaware of the situation. "I need to ask you about Betty," I said. "What exactly is she using the money for?" "What's going on, Molly?" Justin asked, clearly confused. Betty mumbled something about therapy sessions and prescriptions, but I pressed further. "And what about the designer clothes, bags, and other items? Are you really seeing a therapist?" "Of course," Betty replied, but her hesitation was clear. "If that's the case, show me the receipts. You must have them, right?" I demanded. Cornered by my questioning, Betty was at a loss for words. It became evident that she wasn't using the money for her well-being, but for something else entirely. Justin, still puzzled, asked, "Wait, what are you guys talking about?" "Betty has been spending the money she borrowed from me. More than $5,000. on luxury items, I explained. Even so, you're being too aggressive. Can you talk to her more gently? Justin said, his loyalty clearly lying with his mother. In other words, he was a mama's boy. I don't have receipts, Betty admitted. I have been shopping and dining out with friends. I was taken aback. You seem so relaxed despite claiming to be broke. You didn't seem depressed at all. If you've been lying, you need to pay me back immediately. Betty's eyes were full of desperation. I can't come up with that amount right away. Frustrated, I pointed to the designer items in her room. Sell all of those things. If you can't, then move out. Justin, ever the defender, intervened. Hey, you're being unfair. She deserves a little luxury too. I wouldn't call it luxury, I shot back. More than $5,000 has been squandered. This feels like a scam. Justin countered, you're being disrespectful. Just because you're paying the rent doesn't give you the right to be so arrogant. If you're unhappy, then you can leave, he said. What? I was incredulous. I was reaching my boiling point. Steam seemed about to burst from my ears as I glared at him. Did I say anything wrong? You're the one who brought Betty here in the first place. You do nothing but lounge around at home. Thanks to you, I'm stuck living with this mess. You're so condescending, it's infuriating. Get out now, I snapped. Rage consumed me. Fine. Don't regret this, Justin said, grabbing only the essentials and leaving the apartment. I found a new place quickly. As a remote worker, I could do my job from anywhere. I wasn't fixated on living in a high-rise as long as my new home was comfortable. So now, what was next? I had no intention of returning to that place. I had been covering the rent on my own, and I assumed Justin had no interest in taking over. Even if he wanted to, his paycheck wouldn't be enough to cover it. My income far exceeded his. I consulted with a realtor who had assisted me before. I explained that, due to personal reasons, it had become very difficult to manage the monthly rent. Although I could technically afford it, I chose to downplay my situation. I'm sorry to hear that. What would you like to do? The realtor asked. I asked for his help with the situation. One day, while I was working, I received a call from Justin. What's going on? I answered, puzzled. Why didn't you tell me? Justin demanded. I was told to move out because the lease was canceled. Yes, I asked the property agent to break the lease, I explained. Since I don't live there anymore, I don't see why I should continue paying the rent. But my mom and I still live there, Justin protested. I was stunned. What? That's absurd. I don't live there, so why should I keep covering the apartment? If you're in trouble, you should talk to your mom and maybe sell some of her things to raise the money, I suggested. I was incredulous and frustrated. It seemed Justin's sense of entitlement had no bounds. I spoke with a hint of sarcasm. Well, you were the one who wanted to live in a high-rise. If you're not ready to move, why don't you take over the lease yourself? Oh wait, you probably can't afford it with your salary. Justin seemed at a loss for words. You know, you should be able to manage a modest apartment. So go ahead and deal with it. Move in with your mom. Are you kidding me? I retorted. My mom has already used up her savings from selling her house. I don't have any extra funds myself. How do you expect me to find a new place? That's not my problem, he replied. I couldn't understand how he still had no savings when he had been relying on my income. The entitlement and irresponsibility of both him and his mother were astounding. You've brought this upon yourselves with your foolishness, I said. From now on, figure it out on your own. Are you saying we should be homeless? You're still my wife, Justin pleaded. I've told you, figure it out elsewhere. I'm done with this. Goodbye. I hung up the phone. A few minutes later, my phone rang again. It was Betty. Mally, I'm really sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I will pay you back, so please don't kick us out. Her tearful plea surprised and saddened me. I didn't want to lecture her, but I felt I needed to explain. You should live within your means. If you only have a small retirement income, you should adjust your lifestyle accordingly. If you want a higher standard of living, you need to work for it. I knew the harsh reality as a freelancer. If I wanted a certain quality of life, I had to work hard and earn it rather than relying on others. I understand, Betty said. I'm sorry. Please don't let us end up on the street. I'm sorry, I replied, my voice softening. But you need to manage your finances better. The apartment had already been leased to someone else. You really need to move out, I told Betty coldly. This is a matter of regulation. I ended the call with finality. Later, the realtor informed me that Justin and Betty had pleaded with him to keep the lease, but he told them that a new tenant was moving in soon and they had to leave. Even if they had stayed, Justin's salary would have been swallowed up by the rent, leaving them unable to afford anything else. It was absurd for them to expect me to continue supporting their living situation while Justin relied on me. His outbursts had pushed things past the point of no return. I was frustrated and resolved that this was the end. Justin and Betty were left without an apartment and were moving from one motel to another because they couldn't afford the broker's fee or deposit, and no one was willing to be their guarantor. Betty had worked only briefly, so her Social Security payments were minimal, and they were struggling even to eat. I felt they had brought this upon themselves. On my end, I secured another major project and became more financially stable. Looking back on our marriage, I realized that depending solely on a partner, financially or otherwise, is unsustainable. It leads to significant pain when things fall apart. Justin and I separated for a while and eventually divorced. Our feelings had cooled, and there was no reason to stay together. Now that we're estranged, I feel a sense of relief. If I were to marry again, I'd be more discerning. The divorce taught me valuable lessons about life and relationships, and I plan to take my time finding the right partner. "Hey, I need to talk to you about something," I said, gathering my courage. "Can we cut back on having your mom over every weekend?" My husband let out a deep sigh. "Lisa, it feels like you're always saying no to everything." "What do you mean by that?" I asked, a bit taken aback. "You don't want me to build a house. You don't want my mom coming over. You're always against something." "That's not what I meant," I tried to explain. "Then what did you mean? How much longer do we have to keep waiting?" "My name is Lisa, and I've been married to Frank for 5 years. We share a common dream, owning our own home. Now that we've saved enough for a down payment, we're finally ready to leave behind renting and move into the home I've always envisioned. Once we're settled, we plan to start a family and raise our children in a place that truly belongs to us." But just as our hopes were growing, a dark cloud appeared on the horizon. My mother-in-law, who had caught wind of our plans, began making some rather unsettling moves. "So, I hear you're finally buying a house," she said. "Yes, that's right," I replied. "Have you already decided on what kind of home you want?" "Yes, I have an idea of what we want," I said. "That's wonderful. If there's anything I can do to help, just let me know." "Thank you, I appreciate that." "Oh, by the way, have you checked out the showroom near your house?" "No, we haven't managed to get an appointment there yet," I replied. "Well, I'll take care of that for you. We can go together." "Actually, I prefer to go with just my husband," I said, trying to be polite. Despite my efforts, my mother-in-law continued to involve herself in our property search. She even started showing up unannounced. "I brought you a brochure for some land that's for sale," she said one day, catching me off guard. "Thank you very much." My mother-in-law held a dozen leaflets in her hand, eager to share them. "How about this one? It's close to the station and spacious enough for 2 families." Wait, did she just say 2 families? I was too stunned to respond, and she continued talking as if nothing was amiss. "If the train station isn't nearby, it's inconvenient for everything, and you'll want to be close to a hospital for when you get older. This property is also near a supermarket. It must be hard for you to choose with so many options, right?" What started as an offer to help quickly turned into her taking control of the house search. She was making decisions as if she planned to live there too. This is not good at all. I told my husband everything that had happened that night. "Oh, I think she might have mentioned something about living together," he said casually. "What? You want us all to live together?" I asked, surprised. "Well, if you're okay with it, I'm not going to push you into anything, don't worry." I felt blindsided by his response. If I'm okay with it? No, I'm not. I couldn't believe he was being so indecisive. When it's time to tell my mother-in-law that we're not living together, I'm going to be the one dealing with the fallout. Why can't he see that? "Maybe we should stop building the house," I suggested, feeling frustrated. "What? Why?" he asked, clearly confused. "Because of the way you phrased it. If I refuse to live with her, she'll know I was the one who said no. We're going to be together for a long time, and I don't want things to become awkward. I'd rather not have a house if it means dealing with that. We can raise our kids in a rental and use the down payment we save for their education instead." My husband's panic was evident. "Wait a minute, I understand now. I'll tell her no, and we'll move forward with building the house." No, it's fine. You can't even stand up to your mother. I'd never seen him stand up to his mother before. Trust me, I'll handle it, he said, trying to reassure me. Why are you so desperate? He asked, sounding puzzled. I want to live in our own house and raise our children there, I replied. You didn't seem so enthusiastic about it before. That's not true. I was excited. It's hurtful to say otherwise. I feel just as strongly about our children. All right, I understand. My husband promised he would tell his mother no, but given his usual hesitation, I doubted he'd follow through. However, the day after our conversation, my mother-in-law stopped pressuring us and even called to apologize. Lisa, I got scolded by Frank. He told me he wants to live with you alone. I'm sorry for pushing my opinions on you, my mother-in-law said. I was surprised to hear that Frank had actually stood up to her. He could speak his mind when it mattered. Still, I couldn't shake a lingering suspicion. When I told my husband about the apology, he had a satisfied grin on his face. See? When I say I'll speak up, I mean it. What's with that look in your eyes? I asked, puzzled. I was wondering if you really told her, I said, still unsure. Are you doubting me? Isn't that awful? He replied, hurt. I haven't seen you stand up to your mother in 5 years, and you didn't do it in front of me. That's unfair. I tried so hard. You're right, I'm sorry. But you're sweating like crazy. What's going on? Oh, it's just hot. Isn't it a bit warm today? It's the middle of winter. By the way, let's finalize the house contract. You really want to build this house, don't you? Of course I do. That's what we've been saving for. At this point, I had lost interest in building the new house, the dream home I had worked so hard to save for. My enthusiasm had dwindled due to my mother-in-law's behavior and my husband's attitude, making me feel as if all my efforts had been in vain. I found myself stepping back from the idea. Meanwhile, my husband continued to insist on building the house. 6 months had passed since our dispute, and although he kept talking about it, I remained unconvinced. My mother-in-law, who had been quiet, was now growing impatient. She started visiting our house frequently. While she never mentioned the house, her attitude became increasingly arrogant. Both my husband and I work full-time, and we both have weekends off. Lately, my mother-in-law has been coming over to our house every weekend. I could manage if it were just once a month, but her frequent visits are making me uncomfortable. My husband seems to be quite pleased with the arrangement, but it's becoming a problem for me. I'd like to have some peace on Saturdays and Sundays, but she arrives at 7 in the morning and blasts the TV at an incredibly loud volume. If I try to stay in bed, she paces back and forth in front of my room. My husband is busy taking care of her, which should be enough. When I finally gave in and got up at 7:30, she remarked, "How can you sleep in with a guest over? She stays until late on Sunday night, and it's starting to wear me down." My husband remains silent about his mother's behavior, and whenever I think of him, the word divorce crosses my mind. However, I want to avoid that if at all possible. I needed to find a way to improve the situation. "Hey, I need you to stop having your mother over every weekend," I said, expressing my feelings directly. He let out a deep sigh. "Lisa, you always seem to be against everything." "What do you mean by that?" "You don't want to build a house, you don't want my mother visiting. You're against everything." "That's not how I meant it." "Then what did you mean? How long do we have to wait for?" "You just said we. What did you mean by that?" "Who else is waiting?" I asked, confused. "What do you mean?" "You said we just now," I clarified. My husband's face turned red and he began to sweat. "I didn't say that. Maybe I misheard. But we can't build a house if your mother keeps coming over every weekend like this." "Why not?" "Because I can't relax. If my parents came over every weekend, would you be able to rest?" "Your parents won't come. They have such a nice house." "I'm fed up with this nonsense," I said, frustrated. "That's not the issue here," he retorted. "I don't even care about the house anymore. I'm going to invite my parents to stay with us next week." My husband's voice rose. "Absolutely not." "Why not?" "Because it's too exhausting. Don't invite your parents. My mother is the only one who can visit. This is my house too. I'm the head of the house. If you can't follow my rules, then leave." "Are you serious?" "You're completely useless to me. I'm done with you. You can't make my mother happy, and if we can't build a house, she can't live with us." "You promised she wouldn't live with us." "What are you talking about? Once the house was built, we could do whatever we wanted, including having my mother live with us." What do you mean? I've told you this before, and you still don't understand. I planned to have my mother move in once the house was built. I knew it. My mother-in-law didn't back down easily. My husband was plotting with her all along. I see now. All right, I'll leave. I hope you won't regret this, he said. Of course not. Just don't come near me again, I replied firmly. I packed only the essentials and went to my parents' house. They were taken aback by my sudden arrival, but once I explained what had happened, they welcomed me with open arms. This is what family is for, right? I suppose our relationship was damaged from the start when I couldn't trust my husband, I said. Dad, I'm so sorry, I added, feeling the weight of my actions. I understand things didn't work out between you two, but work and personal life are separate issues. Yes, I agree. So my ex-husband and I are now divorced. There were no money claims or financial disputes, just a straightforward division of property. But 3 months have passed. And now my ex-husband is on his knees in front of me. I'm sorry, father-in-law, he says. I'm not your father anymore. Be careful what you call me. Boss, is this a result of me divorcing your daughter? What are you talking about? Why did my ex-husband come all the way to my parents' house and get down on his knees? It's because he received an unwanted transfer. Both of us worked for my father's company, and he seems to believe the transfer was a consequence of our divorce. However, my father made it clear during the divorce that personal matters had no bearing on work decisions. All employees at his company are assigned to regional posts for a few years to enhance their skills, and transfers are never used as a form of punishment. But that explanation doesn't seem to satisfy my ex-husband. Lisa, you need to stop the boss. I thought you told me never to show my face again. I'm sorry, please, he begged. No, this isn't an obligation. I was once in line to be the next president, remember? I can't believe you interrupted me with such nonsense. You're mistaken. I'm still the next president, regardless of our divorce. What? Of course, I'm his daughter. My ex-husband nodded and left our house. The next day, he submitted his resignation, despite people around him trying to explain that the transfer wasn't a demotion. He refused to listen. A few days later, he was found in an unexpected place. I was casually watching a documentary on TV when I saw my ex-husband featured on the program. He appeared in line at a volunteer organization for a meal donation, looking disheveled and poorly dressed. Life can be unpredictable. It made me reconsider the word regret that I once said to him. I'm sure he regrets his actions now. The fact that he was holding 2 meal containers suggested that one was meant for his mother. Although I don't know all the details, it's clear that his life has drastically changed from what it once was. As for me, I'm thriving on my own. My weekdays are filled with work, but I relish my days off. It's a true blessing to sleep soundly without morning disruptions. I am living in a state of happiness and contentment. It was the unexplained coldness of her ex-husband that had caused her so much pain, a pain she struggled to convey to others. She wished she could use that experience as a shield to say no to her in-laws. Lisa, you did an excellent job. I hope you're able to enjoy your time on your own now. I bought a car worth 100 grand with some old man's money just after my husband's funeral. Ashley and I were mentally and physically exhausted, yet Julia said this with glee. David was happily looking at the contract Julia had brought. Whose money are you talking about? What on earth is going on? I couldn't help but raise my voice in frustration. Despite the fact that Ashley and I were mourning the loss of my husband, our eldest son and his wife seemed not only unbothered but even pleased. The insurance money will be deposited, right? Plus, there should be an inheritance. Out of Julia's bag came, unbelievably, my husband's bank book. Seeing that, I burst into laughter. What's so funny? You're planning to use that to buy. I feel sorry for you because that bank book. My words, spoken between gasps of laughter, turned the faces of our eldest son and his wife pale. My name is Amanda Simpson. I was married to Chris and blessed with 2 children. Our eldest daughter Ashley, our eldest son David. Chris's family has been a line of doctors for generations. Both my father-in-law and mother-in-law have medical licenses. Chris had also been working hard since childhood to become a doctor. Drawn to Chris's hardworking and admirable character, which I got to know through a friend's introduction, we became a couple. Seeing Chris's dedication, our daughter Ashley also decided to pursue a career in medicine. Although Ashley wasn't necessarily academically gifted, she was diligent every day. As her mother, I was there to witness her efforts up close. I didn't force her to become a doctor. However, Chris was really pleased when she decided to become one by her own will. Mom, I got an A rating for the medical university. When she got an A rating from her dream university in high school, I couldn't help but shed tears at her success. No, it's not an acceptance yet. I still have to work hard without letting my guard down. I was genuinely happy to see her grow up to be such a kind and resilient person. But David, our eldest son, was quite the opposite. Born prematurely, David had always been frail, and I admit I might have been overprotective of him. But as David grew up, he got stronger and eventually caught up with his peers in physique. Without attending any cram school, he consistently scored perfect marks in elementary school tests. He grew up wonderfully, which was reassuring. However, in the latter half of his middle school years, David started coming home with bruises every day. David, what happened to you? Those injuries. I was concerned, but David started to ignore me. They looked like bruises from fights. Maybe he got into some scuffles. He's a boy, after all. There are times like these. It's kind of a good thing in a way that he's grown up to stand up for himself. As long as he's not causing trouble for others, let him be, Chris said with a laugh. In hindsight, I should have listened to Chris and left things to some extent. However, my overprotective nature towards David made me anxious. I constantly questioned him about the fights and who hurt him, which drove him away. You're so annoying. If you ask me one more time, I'll never speak to you again. Indeed, despite Chris's advice, I kept pushing. After David's stern warning, I reflected and stopped prying. But every time one bruise healed, another appeared. All I could do was watch over him with worry. While David was certainly academically talented, he ended up spending most of his time fighting and went to a local public high school. I hoped that after he outgrew his teenage years, David would discuss his future or college plans, but he remained unchanged. Hey madam, give me some money, he demanded rudely one day. If you think acting like a delinquent makes you cool, you're gravely mistaken, Ashley retorted. Huh? What did you say? David snapped back, and it seemed like a fight was about to break out. The thought of Ashley possibly being harmed left me restless. Don't fight, please. Here, is this for lunch money? I quickly took a $50 note from my wallet and handed it to David. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and left, with Ashley glaring at him. How did it come to this? Did I spoil them too much? Every day I reflected and blamed myself. Even as his classmates began preparing for university entrance exams, David remained unchanged. Chris tried to talk to David multiple times out of concern, but David even began hurling abusive words at Chris. Well, he hasn't done anything that would involve the police, Chris would say. He has been picked up for being out late with friends more than once or twice. In the end, David neither found a job nor decided on further studies and just graduated high school. David, what are you going to do? You can do well if you study. Isn't it better to go to college now? I'm not saying you should become a doctor, but you should get a job. David wouldn't even meet my eyes when I said this. However, a year later, David, who had been jobless and staying at home, approached me. Hey, he said. I thought he might be asking for money again. But when I turned to look at him, David continued, I'm having the kid. I'm getting married. I was left speechless from the shock. David continued, but I'll start working. Can my wife and I live here? Wait, I still don't fully understand the situation. Let's discuss this with your father first. That night, Chris, David, and I had a conversation. We, as parents, came to terms with David's decision to work and his determination to welcome a child and wife. We decided to accept this new family. On the day we were to meet her, Chris, Ashley, and I waited at home. David had gone to fetch her. He's late, isn't he? I remarked. Even after the promised time of 1 o'clock, the two hadn't shown up. We worried that they might have had an accident. We tried reaching out but couldn't get in touch. Contrary to our anxiety, the two casually appeared just before 3. We're back. Wow, this place is massive. It's like a mansion. Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Julia, she said. I was taken aback by the woman David had brought home. Despite claiming to be pregnant, she wore high heels, a short skirt that seemed chilly, and had long, shimmering, pointed nails. In her hand was a plastic bag from a baby goods store, and she greeted us with surprising words. Nice to meet you. I'm David's mother. Really, you're prettier than what David described. Nice to meet you, Amanda. Her behavior lacked any semblance of manners, and I was simply stunned. Where's my room? She asked. Oh, we haven't decided yet, I replied. Okay, I'll just leave the baby stuff in the living room then. With that, Julia entered the house and headed to the living room. She then greeted Chris and Ashley with the same casual tone. The checkout line was so long. Sorry for being late. You all waited, right? Returning to the living room, Julia addressed me, Chris, Ashley, and I could only exchange glances without saying a word. Are you all nervous? Just relax, okay? Chill out. We were simply astounded by her words. We thought today was just a greeting, but Julia came in, placed a ton of luggage in the living room, and acted like she owned the place. Afterward, I greeted Julia again. She was 22 years old and apparently worked part-time at a bar. As a child, her parents divorced and she was raised by her father. However, he later disappeared, and she seems to have grown up in a children's home. I understood it must have been tough without any family, but there are kids who turn out well despite that. I don't think one's circumstances can be an excuse for rudeness. Then Ashley talked to Julia as she discussed her past. How many weeks pregnant are you now? I noticed earlier that you're wearing high heels. Your belly doesn't seem to be showing yet, but it's dangerous. I felt relieved after Ashley kindly said that. Then on Julia's behalf, David spoke up. Right, I thought the same, but Julia apparently only has heeled shoes. Buy her some, madam. Suddenly, the conversation shifted to me, and I was taken aback. Oh, don't be so surprised. You probably don't know my taste, right? If you give me money, I'll choose for myself. I was at a loss for words at Julia's lack of hesitation. Ashley shouted at the two of them. Why should Mom buy it? Why don't you, David? But the baby inside me is her grandchild, isn't it? Julia retorted. So what? It's your child? Ashley shot back. Scary. Is this what a sister-in-law is like? Hilarious, Julia said, mocking her. Ashley was furious at that remark, while Chris just kept silent, his mouth shut tight. What kind of attitude is this? She seems to be looking down on us even though we just met. However, we have to live together from now on. It wouldn't be wise to fight now. Over time, I believe her maternal instincts will grow and she'll change. When that time comes, she should naturally stop wearing heels and remove her nails. That's all I can hope for. Ashley, being a doctor, was particularly concerned about Julia's lack of parental awareness and said sharply, Anyway, make sure you earn and buy your shoes before your belly gets large. Also, remove your nails. If you can't get a pulse oximeter on, they'll forcibly remove them. With that, she stormed out of the living room and locked herself in her room. Julia seemed to be mocking Ashley, but then laughed when David said, Don't worry about her. She's just jealous because I got married before her. Then our life together began. Julia went to work but didn't help around the house. She just slept all day on her days off, using her pregnancy as an excuse. David, as he declared, started working but kept quitting after arguments and then looked for other part-time jobs. The constant job changes were quite headache-inducing, but Chris said nothing about David and Julia. It seemed he had given up on them. Then something unexpected happened. With the baby items ready and the birth of our grandchild just a month away, Chris collapsed at the hospital where he worked. Despite immediate treatment, he couldn't be saved. Even with all the challenges, I had hoped for an increase in family members. I never imagined parting with Chris before that. I was so devastated that I couldn't believe it myself, and Ashley supported me. Inspired by Ashley, I tried to act strong and managed to hold the funeral. On the morning of the funeral, I told Julia, It's fine if you stay at home, Julia. Your belly is large and it must be hard for you. Really? Okay, I'll stay home, she replied. In our region, it's customary not to let pregnant women attend funerals. Even without that tradition, she was about to give birth, so I said that out of concern. Julia gladly accepted my offer. It was my suggestion, and I was okay with it, but I headed to the funeral feeling a bit uneasy. David, who arrived late, seemed worried about Julia and was texting her. I did warn him once, but since the baby could come at any time, I decided to let it slide, except during the funeral. After the funeral, when I got home, I was exhausted both mentally and physically. In the living room, Ashley and I were discussing dinner in a daze. Julia came down from the second floor and handed some documents to David. Tired, huh? Did your old man make it to heaven? She said, laughing. David laughed as well. Might be hell, he replied. You guys just came back from the funeral. What are you even saying? Ashley was furious, but I didn't have the energy to get angry anymore. Come on, Ashley, just go with it, Julia said, pointing at the documents she had given to David. Ashley and I naturally looked at those papers. What's that? What do you mean? Go with it. The heat of the moment left us bewildered and concerned. I used Chris's money to buy a car worth 100 grand, Julia declared, holding up some documents. Ashley and I stared in disbelief while David looked on happily. Whose money? What on earth are you talking about? I raised my voice out of frustration. Chris had passed away, and while Ashley and I were grieving, the couple seemed pleased instead of saddened. We get the insurance money, right? And there should be an inheritance, Julia said, pulling out a bank book from her bag. Dad's bank book? Julia, did you steal it when we were out? That's a rude thing to say. We live together, so it's not stealing. Plus, I learned where the bank book was from David, right, David? Julia responded defiantly. It seemed David was an accomplice. What a pitiable eldest son he was. I hadn't anticipated this at all. I looked dejectedly at the bank book in Julia's hand. Chris's name was clearly written on it, but upon a closer look, I noticed something odd. When I realized the cause of the inconsistency, I couldn't help but burst into laughter. Once I started laughing, I couldn't stop. It had been a long time since I laughed so hard. Julia frowned at my uncontrollable laughter. What's so funny? Have you lost your mind, madam? David hurled insults at me, but I wasn't even mad anymore. All this time, I thought David was smart, but I was wrong. I felt sorry for the foolish couple. Let's see, you wanted to buy a car, right? Have you signed the contract? Are you going to use that money? I feel sorry for you. Did you see the balance in that bank book? Upon hearing my words, David hastily took the bank book from Julia and opened it. What the hell? There's only $3 in here. The couple looked at the bank book in shock. Yes, that bank book was set for closure, and the balance had already been withdrawn. This is a joke. There's supposed to be an inheritance. Where is it? And the insurance money should be deposited too. David was furious, and Julia echoed him. Yes, there's an inheritance and insurance money. Both of my parents-in-law passed away early, and Chris had a lot of inherited and accumulated assets. Notably, Chris wasn't just a doctor, he also owned several hospitals. His total assets amounted to $1 million. However, those were assets he had built, not things he owned. Most of his assets have been donated and are now gone. The medical fees he received from patients, he wanted to use them to help other patients. What? Didn't you know? He made a large donation, and it was in the newspapers. Hearing this, David began to tremble. He never showed interest in family matters and didn't read the newspaper, so his ignorance wasn't surprising. Moreover, the remaining money is managed in an online bank. I can't access it until we complete the inheritance procedures. Anyway, what about the insurance money? When will it be deposited? Julia rushed, grabbing the bank book and approaching me. Ashley, standing next to me, began to laugh. Don't you know, insurance money is not deposited into the account of the deceased but to the beneficiary's account. It'll be transferred to my account and my mother's, Ashley explained, chuckling. Hearing this, Julia's bank book slipped from her hands. David looked dumbfounded, and Ashley and I exchanged glances, stifling our laughter. What am I going to do now? I've already signed contracts, added so many options, and they told me I can't cancel. Mom, please, just this once, lend me some money. David knelt beside the distraught Julia. It had been so long since he called me Mom that it felt unfamiliar, as if a stranger was asking for a favor. I don't know. Figure it out yourselves. I pushed him away coldly. Today, I couldn't forgive the actions of my eldest son and his wife. I'm sure Chris felt the same. Mom, you must be tired. Let's go to bed, Ashley suggested. Yes, I'm not in the mood for dinner either, I added. Ashley and I stood up, ignoring the two who were sweating in the living room, and headed to the bedroom. It seemed that during the funeral, David had been communicating with Julia about a deal. I thought they were concerned about their health, but it seemed the car was more important than their unborn child. In his lifetime, Chris always said he didn't want to leave a single penny to David and Julia. As planned, the insurance money was transferred to Ashley and me. Chris died young, and David, even after starting a family, remained unreliable. Chris had thought about what might happen after his death and even left a will. According to the will, the real estate, most of the remaining cash, and the hospital were left to me. Ashley was nominated as the successor to this hospital and bequeathed his personal investments. David was given a large piece of land in the countryside. As we opened the will and heard its contents, Julia said, "So can't we sell the land and buy a car?" Listen to the end. I interrupted Julia and continued reading. With that land and some of the cash, take $100,000 for building a house and leave this home. What does that mean? Julia asked in confusion. We were at the probate court. The will has been validated and carries full legal force. It means exactly what it says. You get the land and money to build a house. You should be grateful, but this house should eventually belong to David, the eldest son, right? I replied, looking at Julia as if she was pleading for help. I responded with a smirk. It's what I received. And decide who to give it to. You damn old woman, better start packing your bags when you get home, huh? Julia retorted. By the way, the land that Chris designated for David was about 30 miles away in the mountains. It was indeed vast but mostly untouched woodland. No matter how large the land is, if the construction cost is $100,000, the house built on it would probably be small. I bet David and Julia, who likely had nothing, would have made a fuss about the inheritance. Whether Chris gave them the land with that in mind, I don't know, but I believe Chris created an environment where Ashley and I can live peacefully. Besides, David and Julia shouldn't even have any right to receive anything. They should be grateful for whatever they can get. A few days later, a grandchild was born. Julia's water broke in the middle of the night, and she was immediately taken to the hospital after making a call. However, due to her dropping blood pressure and the hospital being understaffed at night, Julia had to have an emergency C-section. Ashley had repeatedly told her to remove her nail extensions, but she didn't listen. Apparently, the nurse possibly removed them. No, I just got these done 3 days ago. Don't take them off, Julia. Don't move, the amniotic fluid is gushing out. They apparently had a standoff in the middle of the night. From what I heard from Ashley, this confrontation was more challenging than the surgery. I've never had fancy nails like young people do, but it seems like it was painful. It's undoubtedly a case of getting what she deserved, I thought to myself. Julia, who had been saved along with her child, could no longer stand up to Ashley and quickly became docile. She may be upset about the inheritance, but she's no longer acting superior to us. I hope she's grateful that we let her rest for the first month after childbirth, Mom, Ashley said regretfully. Can we stay here? We don't need the land or the money. No, even if you stayed here, you both only earn as much as part-time jobs and don't contribute to household expenses. I replied firmly. David's plea was met with a firm denial from both Ashley and me. Reluctantly, David went to cancel the car purchase, but he was charged a penalty fee of $10,000, which he had to pay from the $100,000 set aside for construction. Whether they were reluctant to move to the countryside or not, they considered selling the land and renting an apartment. However, the rent was too high for David and Julia's salaries, and there were no buyers for the vast woodland. They realized they had no choice but to build a house on it, as stated in the will. Desperately, they started looking for a contractor who could build a house for $90,000, but it wasn't going well. The baby is still young, so I'm letting you all stay here for now. You can leave whenever you want, okay? I told David, who fell silent at my words. A week later, they found a construction company, but all they could afford was a small prefabricated hut. I didn't expect Julia to keep it clean, so even a small house should be fine. I told the couple who were preparing to move. You'll need to decide on daycare, so until you're settled, I can take care of the baby. You both should become independent as parents first. You're taking our child, you monster, Julia exclaimed angrily, but David stopped her. With just my earnings, it's impossible to support the two of them. Let's leave our baby here until things settle. No way, I'll divorce you then, Julia threatened. Even if you do, you still won't have a home, I interjected calmly. It seemed David was finally facing reality, desperately trying to convince the furious Julia. Then don't make it come to that, I said. I didn't say I'd take her away. If you can, take her with you. When I snorted and said this, Julia bit her lip in frustration and quieted down. She must have realized that she had no choice but to temporarily part with her baby. Afterward, the couple quietly packed their things and left. I did feel sorry for the baby, however, having parents like that might not make much difference. Of course, if they changed their ways, it would be best for the baby to be raised by her own parents. But I couldn't help but think that the baby might be happier being raised by Ashley and me. David and Julia, who moved to their new land, contacted us almost every day. If it was about the granddaughter, I was happy to reply, but all they ever asked for was money. When ignored, They sent pictures of bread for dinner. Seeing this, Ashley laughed. Even if they ruin their health, they won't be able to afford medical bills. In the countryside, a car is essential, I commented. They're currently driving a used car they bought for $3,000, which frequently stalls. They might be saying this to gain our sympathy, but they don't know it's just a laughing matter for us, Ashley added. In this situation, they probably won't be able to take their daughter back, I concluded. But as long as we can live with our adorable granddaughter, I think it's okay. When she turned 3, she was very cute, kind, and nothing like David or Julia. She was a hard worker. Ashley bought her a number puzzle, and she eagerly learned numbers and could already read letters. David and Julia are still living day by day, Ashley observed. Occasionally, when they receive pictures of their daughter, they exclaim, "Super cute," as if looking at a stuffed toy. It still seems impossible for the two of them to become parents, I mused. When the granddaughter grows up, I hope she can learn from her parents' mistakes and grow up straight. That's what I think. It appears my husband has fallen under some devilish influence. I've made the decision to transfer ownership of this house to Susan. Should anyone oppose me, be prepared for the possibility of divorce. My husband intends to bestow our home, registered under my name, to the spouse of our eldest son, a true harpy who should vacate immediately. This conniving wife has manipulated my husband to her advantage, but I shall reclaim what's rightfully mine. I find it rather amusing, really. I can easily manage the monthly mortgage of $1,800 on my own. As it seems, even my eldest son has aligned with her. Well, I no longer hold any sentimental attachment to this decrepit abode. I shall relocate elsewhere. Rest assured, all 3 of you will face the consequences. Prepare yourselves. My name is Grace, and I am 60 years old. I hold an executive position in a prominent corporation. I reside with my husband, Robert, who is 2 years my junior. Just last year, we embarked on renovating our ancestral home in anticipation of our future. Built by my father, the house had aged considerably and required updates to accommodate our advancing years. However, due to our age and the extensive renovations, the loan amount is somewhat burdensome at $1,800 per month. However, the loan amount is well within our means, and I've been assured of its approval given my executive position in a major corporation. Interestingly, Robert, my husband, manages a small restaurant earning less than me, which seemingly facilitates my loan application process. Yet, solely relying on my income to repay the loan would pose challenges. Although the house originally belonged to your father and is now in your name, I can't help but feel guilty. Would you be able to cover the entire loan amount? In return, I'm more than willing to increase my contribution towards our living expenses. We jointly deliberated on the decision to renovate, and the transformation of our home is nothing short of remarkable. Its newfound beauty and comfort are almost surreal. Renovating the very house I grew up in brought me immense joy, fostering the hope of a lifetime within its walls. I never imagined the day would arrive when I have to bid farewell to this cherished home. Then one afternoon, my phone buzzes with a message. "I'm getting married," announces my eldest son, Jack, through the receiver. At 31, Jack holds a prestigious position as a section chief in a major corporation. He's always been diligent, immersing himself in studies and extracurricular activities, and his dedication has only deepened in adulthood. Despite his achievements, discussions of his romantic life have been scarce. Naturally, I found myself intrigued by the woman Jack intended to wed, a subject of much speculation. What manner of person could she be? If she has captured Jack's heart, she must possess remarkable qualities. Yet, a pang of concern gnaws at me. Could she be scheming, taking advantage of Jack's limited experience in matters of the heart? The anticipation and nerves swirled within me as we awaited the arrival of our son's significant other for the first time. Finally, the day arrived, and a poised woman with chestnut locks draped in a pristine white chiffon dress graced our doorstep. "I'm Susan, pleased to meet you." She greeted us with impeccable manners and a tidy appearance, leaving a favorable first impression. Flashing a brilliant smile, she extended her greetings to both Mom and Dad. Observing her, I couldn't help but feel reassured. Jack could surely be entrusted to her care. It seemed Robert shared my sentiments, his grin mirroring my own. "She's a keeper," he whispered in approval. Susan, catching his words, clasped Robert's hand and met his gaze earnestly. The intensity of the moment left me questioning her motives. What was she playing at? Taken aback by her sudden closeness, I instinctively recoiled, sensing Jack's own surprise, though Robert appeared unperturbed. While I harbored no feelings of jealousy, the encounter left an uncomfortable knot in my stomach. What are you doing?" I questioned, my tone tinged with uncertainty. "Thank you," Susan replied, her response doing little to ease my unease. Sensing Jack's discomfort, I directed my attention towards Susan, only for her to stammer apologetically, "Oh, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have overstepped on our first meeting. I'm truly sorry," hastily releasing Robert's hand. I often hear that I lack awareness of personal space. It's never my intention to cause offense. I just end up doing it. I'm really sorry. Despite her sincere remorse, I couldn't help but feel taken aback by her behavior, a stark contrast to my initial positive impression. But Jack is absolutely smitten with her, even with her unconventional behavior. Robert interjected, his tone tinged with fondness. "Susan's lack of personal space is actually one of her endearing qualities. She's the one who took the initiative with me despite my shyness around women. Thanks to her, I've been able to open up and envision a future together." Seeing Jack, who's usually quite introverted, transform like this, well, I trust him in your hands. Despite my initial reservations, I came to realize that Susan was indeed a kind-hearted person. With my approval granted, their wedding plans swiftly fell into place, culminating in a joyous ceremony just a few weeks later. From the depths of my heart, I wish them nothing but endless happiness. 6 months into their marriage, upon returning home one evening, I was greeted by an unexpected sight. A pair of women's shoes sat at the entrance, and in the living room, I found Susan. "Ah, welcome back, mother-in-law," she greeted me cheerfully amidst the scattered remnants of a drinking session. Puzzled by the scene, I couldn't help but inquire, "What's all this? Why the impromptu party without Jack?" Curiosity piqued, I sought an explanation. "Well, on my way home from work, I ran into Susan. She expressed a desire to bond, so we opted for a drink. With payday still out of reach, we thought home was the best venue," Robert explained, his tone tinged with amusement. "But why not include Jack in the festivities? And I wouldn't want to intrude on the newlyweds' privacy. They could have simply enjoyed a drink at their own place," I countered, tilting my head in confusion. "It could have been fine at our place, but our home is a bit of a mess right now," Susan confessed, her words slightly slurred from the effects of the drinks. "But why drink here together? Why not invite Jack?" I pressed, puzzled by the unconventional gathering. Having a daughter-in-law visit her in-laws for drinks while they're newlyweds? It's a bit unusual, I remarked, scanning the room for any sign of Jack's presence. "Jack's swamped with work, and I've been pulling overtime shifts. It's just so lonely," Susan's voice cracked as tears welled up in her eyes. There, Susan, it's not your fault," I comforted, reaching out to console her. "Jack is the one to blame for leaving his newlywed wife alone." Robert consoled Susan, gently stroking her hair. "Oh, daddy-in-law," I inwardly cringed at the peculiar sight. It was all rather unsettling. "Robert, remember your position. Susan is your daughter-in-law. Showing such intimacy is disrespectful to Jack." I reprimanded him firmly, hoping to steer him back to propriety. However, before I could say more, Susan interjected, "Please don't scold daddy-in-law." "What?" I couldn't help but express my bewilderment at her defense of Robert. Though I had much to say, the exhaustion from a long day at work left me devoid of energy. "I'm going to take a bath. Please clean up," I sighed, retreating to the bathroom to seek solace. Resolved to address the situation, I dialed Jack's number to explain the bizarre turn of events. He insists he'll leave work immediately to pick up Susan. Understandable. Susan may be a tad eccentric, but Jack's willingness to drop everything for her speaks volumes about their bond. Still, I can't shake the feeling that life with her post-marriage might be a tad challenging. Despite my uncertainties, I resolve to offer Jack some marital advice when he arrives. Lost in contemplation, time slips away as I soak in the tub. Feeling a bit woozy, I make my way to the living room, expecting to find Jack ready to escort Susan home. To my surprise, Jack, despite being the designated driver, is indulging in a drink. "Jack, you drove here, right? You shouldn't be drinking," I gently remind him, only to be met with a cheerful, tipsy response. "Susan wanted a drink, so I thought we'd make a night of it," Jack explains, his words tinged with joviality. "While I'm relieved my son will be staying the night, The presence of the daughter-in-law who's left a less than stellar impression gives me pause. Suddenly, a sense of bewilderment washes over me. Eh? I stammer, genuinely puzzled. But before I can protest further, Jack, already well into his drinks, interjects, "You know, I could drive you guys home." I don't want Susan to overstay her welcome. Despite my fatigue, I offer to chauffeur them home. However, Jack, ever the gracious host, insists, No, I feel bad. Why don't you join us for a drink?" I'm rendered speechless. Something feels amiss. Suddenly, Susan flashes a mischievous grin. It's as if she's mocking my confusion. It's just my imagination, right? I try to convince myself it's a misunderstanding. Little do I know, her elaborate scheme has already begun unfolding. The following day, Susan returned, her apologies pouring forth like a flood. "I'm truly sorry," she insisted before promptly leaving. I felt a sense of relief wash over me, as if a tempest had finally passed. However, upon returning home that same evening, I found Susan once again present, with no sign of Jack in sight. A wave of despair crashed over me, though the circumstances differ from the previous day. "I apologize for disturbing you once more, but I felt compelled to offer my apologies," Susan expressed, presenting me with a box of sweets. "I got carried away. My mistake," Robert chimed in, his remorse palpable. While somewhat irksome, their display of contrition signaled a genuine effort to mend their ways. "I forgive you." "Thank you," I responded, sensing Susan's discomfort and appreciating their attempt at reconciliation. With that, Susan ceased her visits, sparing me further interaction. To be honest, I was relieved. I had no desire to engage with her any longer. Or so I thought, until one fateful day when Robert approached me with a solemn expression, signaling he had something important to discuss. As I pondered what it might entail and remained in the living room, Jack and Susan returned home. "It's been a while," I greeted them, only to be met with silence. Perplexed, I wondered if they hadn't heard me. Suddenly, Robert's voice shattered the silence, declaring, "I'm giving this house to Susan. If you object, we're getting a divorce." My mind reeled in disbelief. What was he saying? I couldn't comprehend his sudden proclamation. "Mother-in-law, please leave," Susan interjected, her words plunging me into chaos. What does that mean?" I demanded, my thoughts spinning. "Hold on, why are you giving the house to Susan?" I pressed Robert for answers, but his response only deepened my confusion. "You've been bullying Susan all this time," he accused. "Bullying? That's absurd, utterly baseless," I protested, struggling to make sense of the accusations hurled my way. But no matter how vehemently I argued back, Robert wouldn't listen, so shut up. Susan's words hit me like a slap in the face, explaining why she had been in tears, unable to return home until now. Robert's shouting only intensified, while Susan's tears continued to flow. How had things spiraled to this point? Suddenly, Jack chimed in, his voice laden with disbelief. "I never imagined my mother would stoop to this. It's beyond messed up." The more I denied the accusations, the more enraged they became. Susan's tears seemed endless. "That's it. I'm divorcing you. Leave now. I'm staying here with them," Robert declared firmly. "Why should I give my house to Susan?" I demanded, incredulous. In response, he shot back, "Because Susan is deeply hurt. Ordinarily, we demand compensation, but I believe there's a better way. By taking away your prized possession and giving it to Susan, it'll inflict the appropriate amount of damage on you, don't you think? I didn't bully her. Why should I be the one suffering? Besides, Susan quit her job when she got married. There's no way she can afford an $1,800 loan," I argue. Robert's response comes swiftly. "Don't worry. We'll put the title in Jack's name. With his salary and his previous employer, we can make the change right away." Despite his assurances, I remained skeptical. Changing the title is no small feat, especially with the loan in place. It's not as simple as just flipping a switch. I doubt the bank will approve it, I counter. Robert, however, remains optimistic. "You work for a big corporation, and so does Jack. We should be fine. Besides, I have a friend who works at the bank where you have your loan. I'm sure we can talk to him, and everything will work out." It's baffling where their sudden confidence stemmed from. That's right, an $1,800 loan is a breeze. Lol. Jack, emboldened by Robert's assurances, now stands firm in his conviction that I must relinquish the house. Despite my repeated protests, insisting I hadn't bullied Susan and thus wouldn't give up the house, they remain unmoved. Every objection I raise only ignites another heated argument. "This is too much," I mutter, growing weary of the ordeal. Through her tears, Susan finally speaks up, her voice trembling with emotion. "Mother-in-law, for the sake of this child, please," she pleads, gently caressing her belly. My heart skips a beat as the weight of her words sinks in. "No way, Mom. Susan is pregnant," Jack interjects, dropping the bombshell. Given her fragile state, the stress might lead to a miscarriage. "So please, reconsider," he urges. Stress during pregnancy is indeed a serious concern, but surrendering my home over baseless accusations seems unfathomable. I'm left feeling bewildered and conflicted. "Please just leave me alone for a moment," I murmur, retreating to the bedroom, seeking solace from the chaos unfolding. Doubts gnaw at my mind as I ponder Susan's accusations. Have I unknowingly treated her poorly? I wonder aloud, sinking into the bed, consumed by worry. Then a sudden discovery jolts me from my thoughts. "What's this?" I gasped, spotting a strand of brown hair on the bedspread. Robert's and my hair are both jet black. There's no plausible explanation for a stray brown strand. Could this revelation hint at infidelity, adding another layer to our already tumultuous situation? My mind reels at the possibility, teetering on the edge of despair. I don't even know what's real anymore. I whisper, tears streaming down my face as I succumb to exhaustion, drifting into a fitful sleep. When I awaken, the room is cloaked in darkness, signaling that night has fallen. As I attempt to make my way back to the living room, voices drift through the air, indicating that Jack and Susan have yet to return home. I wish I could join in for a drink. Robert's voice rings out, brimming with enthusiasm. "You can't, remember? You're pregnant," Susan reminds him, her tone equally fervent. Faced with their fervor, I find myself unable to intervene, resigned to the silent turmoil raging within me. Susan's cryptic accusations had left me in a state of despair, unable to bring myself to face the unfolding drama in the living room. Suddenly, the hushed tones of an intimate conversation pierced the silence. "Oh, Susan, I love you," Robert's voice murmured affectionately, followed by Susan's hesitant response, "Stop it, Robert. What if Jack or my mother-in-law finds out?" My heart raced with confusion and disbelief. What on earth are Robert and Susan doing? I muttered to myself, unable to comprehend the scene unfolding before me. "Don't worry, Jack is passed out drunk, and Grace hasn't emerged from her room in ages. She's probably fast asleep by now," Robert reassured Susan, his tone laced with amusement. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. So they've been planning this all along, I realized, a surge of nausea rising within me. They kicked me out of my own bed to have their tryst with Susan, hidden from Jack. My home, a mere venue for their illicit affair, I concluded bitterly, feeling utterly betrayed. Fine, I'll let go of this wretched place. But mark my words, there will be consequences. The following morning, I feigned sleep in my room, pretending as though nothing had transpired. Truthfully, I couldn't bear the thought of sleeping in that bed any longer, and the shock of the previous night had rendered sleep elusive. Finally summoning the courage to relinquish the house, I declared, "I've decided to hand over the house." The reaction was immediate. A collective grin spread across their faces. "Fantastic, let's initiate the transfer of ownership right away," Robert exclaimed eagerly. "I'm sure I can secure a loan approval in no time," Jack chimed in, his excitement palpable. It pained me to see him so oblivious, but I refrained from speaking the truth to a son who seemed wholly under his wife's sway. "Not yet," I interjected, delaying the proceedings. In the days that followed, divorce procedures and the transfer of ownership consumed our time and energy. It was a grueling process, but we persevered, ultimately succeeding in changing the ownership. "From today onward, it's no longer your house," Robert proclaimed triumphantly. "Get out of here, old lady, lol." Susan's spiteful whisper sent a surge of anger coursing through me. "I'll leave, you don't have to tell me," I retorted, masking the hurt beneath a veneer of indifference. Surrendering the house I had called home for a lifetime was undeniably sorrowful, but it had morphed into a den of betrayal. Yet, I harbored no regrets. From now on, I'll turn the tables on these three in their twisted dynamic. They'll rue the day they crossed me, I vowed silently. Nearly a month after vacating the premises, I felt ready to execute my plan. Returning to my former home, I hesitated only briefly before ringing the doorbell. "What does a stranger want here?" Robert's voice, tinged with anger, greeted me even after all this time. "May I come in? I have something important to discuss," I stated assertively, unwilling to be dismissed so easily. "Why should I let you in my house?" Robert hesitated, clearly reluctant to entertain my request. "It's for Susan's sake, too. I have something important to share," I insisted, hoping to pique his curiosity enough to grant me entry. The mere mention of her name was enough to sway Robert, allowing me entry without hesitation. Though I felt a wave of disgust at the thought of invoking her name, I knew Robert's weakness for her, so I played that card. "An outsider is here," Robert announced, a term that stung, considering our former marital status. His choice of words irked me, but I pushed aside my irritation, focusing on the task at hand. "What do you want after all this time?" he demanded, the tension palpable in the room. "I want you to look at this," I replied, laying out the photos before them. "What? What is this?" Robert's voice betrayed his confusion as he studied the images before him. "These are," he began, his words trailing off as he recognized the figures in the photos, himself and Susan, captured on what appeared to be a date. In truth, since our divorce. I had enlisted the help of a private investigator to track their movements, resulting in these incriminating snapshots. "Just a moment. What are you trying to insinuate with these photos?" Robert's tone turned defensive, attempting to downplay the significance of the evidence before him. "We're simply a close father-in-law and daughter-in-law, nothing more, nothing less," he asserted, his words ringing hollow in the face of the damning evidence. "Yeah, why are you resorting to such underhanded tactics? What do you hope to achieve by presenting these nonsensical photos?" Susan chimed in, her tone laced with disdain. Despite their protests of innocence, I remained unconvinced. "Well, how about this?" I announced, retrieving my smartphone and playing a recorded conversation. "I really do love Susan. Hey, if you speak so loudly, Jack and mother-in-law will wake up." Robert's voice echoed through the room, followed by Susan's murmurs. "What? What's this?" Robert's voice trembled with disbelief as he listened to the recording. "Actually, the day I discovered your relationship, I had recorded your conversation," I explained calmly, though my heart raced with anger. "No, this is a misunderstanding," Robert protested desperately, his words falling on deaf ears. "What misunderstanding? This is clearly not acceptable," Jack interjected, his fury palpable. She kept her head down. I added, deciding to stoke the flames further. "Listen, I hate to ask, but who's really the father of that baby in your belly?" I pressed, watching as Jack's complexion turned ashen. "Is it with a dad?" Jack's voice quivered with fear. "No way, my father-in-law was pulling out every time." Oh, Susan's words trailed off, a realization dawning upon her too late. "You just admitted it, didn't you? You just admitted it." Robert and Jack erupted into shouts, their anger boiling over. In the chaos that ensued, they ended up wrestling with each other, their scuffle abruptly interrupted by Susan's cry of pain as a cramp seized her stomach. "I've been saying this all along, haven't I? I haven't been bullying Susan. Could it be that you were lying just to drive me away, to manipulate Jack?" I interjected, my voice laced with frustration. Jack recoiled in disbelief. "You're kidding. What the hell? That's just messed up with you guys," he exclaimed, his trust shattered. Unable to trust even my own mother, I watched as Jack grappled with the betrayal, his sense of guilt palpable. "Now that you understand all this, spill everything," he demanded angrily, his gaze fixed on the two culprits. Reluctantly, they confessed, revealing, "We have enough evidence. Here, are we going to court?" The mere mention of the word court seemed to loosen their tongues, and they began to speak. Apparently, Susan initially loved Jack, but upon seeing our newly renovated and beautiful home during their marriage proposal, she grew envious. "My parents' house was pretty run down, and I was jealous of a beautiful house like this," she confessed bitterly. "The interior was quite nice too," she explained tearfully. It became evident that the woman who coveted a home like ours had meticulously orchestrated her plan to win over Robert on the day of the marriage proposal. So she intentionally ambushed Robert after his work without inviting Jack and brought him home. For several months, as Jack remained absent, she cultivated a relationship with Robert and plotted to push me out. Then why not propose to live together from the beginning? I questioned. She paused before replying. I have a negative perception of mothers-in-law. At home, my mom and grandma fought every day because my grandma bullied my mom. I didn't want to subject myself to living with a mother-in-law. The only way to live comfortably in a beautiful house was to get rid of the mother-in-law. Indeed, with such a perception, living with a mother-in-law would be undesirable. But to pursue your father-in-law? What did Robert think about this? I pressed further. I knew I was being manipulated, but when she greeted me with a smile, held my hand, Robert's admission trailed off, revealing his vulnerability. Despite being aware of being used, he seemed to have succumbed to her charm, choosing to abandon me to keep her by his side. You guys, you're the worst. Jack's words hung heavily in the air as the two offenders hung their heads, tears streaming down their faces. Following Jack's natural decision to divorce, he opted to verify the child's DNA, revealing Robert as the biological father. I won't pay child support, Jack declared, demanding compensation from the guilty parties. Of course, me too. I can't believe I'm suing my own father for compensation. I consoled Jack, gently patting his head as he grappled with the shocking revelation. That deceitful woman had appended all our lives, but she would soon come to regret her actions more than any of us. My intuition proved correct. 2 years later, she remarried Robert, choosing to endure their union for the sake of their child. Placing their offspring in daycare, she resumed work. Look, Daddy, Uncle came to pick you up today, she chirped to their child, unaware of the disapproving glances from other mothers at the daycare. The children seemed to be adjusting well, but she's struggling to connect with other moms, feeling isolated. When she attempted to explain her divorce and remarriage to her own parents, their fury was directed at Robert, leading to their estrangement. It's all a consequence of her choices. As for the house, Jack now resides there alone. I contemplated selling it, but couldn't bear to part with it, considering it's been Mom's home since birth, a repository of cherished memories. Despite my insistence that the house felt eerie after everything that happened, Jack couldn't bring himself to sell it due to overwhelming guilt. Perhaps influenced by my constant aversion to the house, Jack arranged for it to be professionally cleaned and cleared out of all remnants of Robert and Susan. Despite his efforts, Jack felt remorseful, acknowledging the pain he caused Mom. Even though it was because of that woman, I did something terrible to Mom. I know you probably won't forgive me, but please visit me or come to the house on a whim, and let me show you some devotion, he pleaded, offering me a ticket for a hot springs trip. Though I'm not ready to forgive him just yet, Jack's remorse has touched me. I'm considering taking steps to rebuild our parent-child relationship to what it once was. After returning from a week-long international trip, I was pleasantly surprised when my mother-in-law, Linda, called me with an air of victory. She mentioned something about a $30,000 windfall we had apparently saved. Confused, I tried to recall any recent instance where I had amassed such a sum. As a freelance jewelry designer, I maintain a savings account for unexpected expenses, but I certainly don't keep large amounts of cash around. My bank card was securely with me, and normally, no one else has access to withdraw such a substantial amount from my account. He gave it to me, so I took it from the sideboard drawer, Linda declared over the phone, leaving me bewildered. Before I could understand more, she quickly thanked me and hinted at counting on me for future financial help before hanging up. I was left puzzled about the missing $30,000 until Kevin, my husband, returned home and cleared up the confusion. It was a misunderstanding. However, a month later, Linda bombarded me with numerous calls. I chose to ignore them initially, but the constant ringing eventually compelled me to answer. Over 60 missed calls displayed on my phone screen was disconcerting. As I picked up, Linda's shrill voice filled the room, accusing me of ignoring her. Her tone suggested she felt wronged, but to me, it was merely the consequences of her assumptions. My life as Mary, a 35-year-old busy freelance jewelry designer wanting children but overwhelmed by work, is shared with my equally busy husband Kevin. He originally had a corporate job but now assists me in managing my growing design business. Early in our marriage, my designing gigs were sparse and we largely depended on Kevin's steady income. Now, as my business flourishes, our roles and responsibilities have evolved, but so have our challenges, like dealing with unexpected family misunderstandings about money. As I neared the age of 33, my career as a jewelry designer had begun to flourish, necessitating better organization of my increasingly hectic schedule. Sensing the growing demands of my business, Kevin, who was well placed in his company and on track for promotion, made a bold decision. He resigned from his job to partner with me, applying his skills and management to our joint venture. Together, we secured contracts with prestigious international brands, enhancing both our professional and personal lives. However, managing success came with its unique set of challenges, particularly involving Kevin's mother, Linda. Living alone in the family home, she perceived our lives through a lens of luxury and often approached us with financial requests. "You always seem to be living so lavishly. I'm jealous," she would comment. As part of my role, attending product launches and dinners with executives was routine, yet Linda saw these obligations as mere leisure. Her requests grew more personal over time. "I'm going to throw a party for my friend soon. Can you give me some money for it?" she asked on one occasion. Although it might appear that we could easily afford such expenses, maintaining our business image was costly and filled with obligations that we couldn't ignore. We weren't living in luxury. These were necessary aspects of our work. Despite my repeated refusals, Kevin, being her son, would occasionally acquiesce to demands, reasoning that a little financial help was a small price for peace. "If giving her a little money keeps her quiet, then it's worth it," he argued, finding it simpler to appease her than to have her work disrupted. Yet Linda's demands only escalated. Recently, she expressed a desire for a new dress for an upcoming gathering. Just the other day, Linda came over and pestered Kevin. "Wouldn't a two-piece suit work? We've been asked to buy clothes before," she said. There might be cheaper options, but what Linda wants is certainly not cheap. I explained to her that her rebuttal was that it was a fancy party, and she couldn't be the only one dressed in old clothes. Furthermore, she insisted on a matching bag, leaving us exasperated. To manage her frequent requests, Kevin had previously set up a credit card in Linda's name, instructing her to use it for her expenses. Initially, she overspent significantly and was cautioned by Kevin. Although he asked her to inform us before making significant purchases, she continued her extravagant spending. This pattern of financial demands has left both Kevin and me at our wits' end, trying to balance the delicate act of supporting family while maintaining the integrity and sustainability of our business. I discovered an exquisite ring and couldn't resist purchasing it, though I regret not informing you beforehand. Unfortunately, the bill was exorbitant. If spending is going to be this unrestrained, perhaps it's best to return the card. We simply cannot cover these costs. The credit card was in Linda's name, but Kevin was the one managing and paying the bills. Linda seemed to misunderstand the purpose of the credit card, treating it as if it were an unlimited resource. She didn't grasp that every purchase made would eventually need to be paid for, and since the money wasn't coming directly from her own pocket, she continued to use it freely. Recognizing the need to curb her spending, Kevin decided to set a spending limit on her card. This led to Linda storming into our home one day, frustrated and complaining. "What the heck? I couldn't pay for my shopping the other day," Linda complained. "Why?" We explained that your excessive spending was straining our finances, which necessitated lowering your monthly limit. Kevin replied, trying to maintain some peace. "It's still enough, right? But you two are still dressing up and going to fancy places. How is what I'm doing any different?" Linda protested, viewing our activities as purely recreational. "That's part of our job, Linda. If that's a job, then what I'm doing isn't any different," I explained. "It's unfair that only you two get to have all the fun," she argued. While it's true that our work involves attending product launches and parties in luxurious venues, these are professional obligations, not leisure activities, despite her misconceptions. Setting a spending limit on Linda's credit card seemed to have calmed the situation somewhat. Occasionally, Linda would visit and air her grievances to Kevin, but overall, life proceeded without major disruptions. As the end of the year approached, an exciting opportunity presented itself. A foreign brand manufacturer approached me with a proposal to expand our business dealings by relocating our base overseas. The prospect thrilled me, as it could potentially elevate me to the ranks of top-tier designers. Kevin, ever supportive as my manager, was all for taking the leap. "It's a chance we have to take," he affirmed. However, the prospect of moving abroad brought a new concern. "Linda, Given her past behavior, it was a legitimate worry that she might insist on joining us overseas. The idea of living internationally was appealing, yet the thought of dealing with Linda's demands in a new country was daunting. When we shared our plans to move overseas for work with Linda that weekend, she responded exactly as we predicted. "I want to come too," she declared, assuming our move would be an endless vacation. "We're going there for work. It won't be as leisurely as you think," Kevin tried to clarify. "You're trying to trick me. You plan to live even more lavishly there without me watching," she accused. "We're not moving there permanently. We'll come back after our work is done," I assured her. I explained, trying to ease her concerns. "Yes," she retorted, "you're saying that, but you're planning to leave me behind, aren't you?" Exhausted by this repetitive argument, both Kevin and I were weary. In an attempt to compromise, Kevin suggested, "Okay, we can't take you with us, but how about we pay for a week-long trip for you instead?" Linda perked up at this. "Really? Are you sure? We'll cover your flight and hotel, but you'll need to manage the rest," Kevin affirmed, pleased at least for the moment. However, the peace was short-lived. A few days later, while Kevin was preoccupied with the overseas move arrangements, Linda dropped by unexpectedly. "Hey, Mary," Kevin said, "but I want to shop over there too. Can you give me some money?" she asked. "What about the card that Kevin gave you?" I inquired, knowing she had a designated credit card for such expenses. Linda's face fell. "That's the thing. Kevin finally took it away from me the other day," she admitted. It appears she had been reprimanded for overspending, and anticipating the challenges of managing finances with different currency rates overseas, Kevin had confiscated the card. "I don't have that kind of money on hand either. I can't give you money without Kevin's approval." "Can you ask him?" I suggested, knowing full well Kevin's stance. "It's no use asking him. That's why I'm asking you," she pressed, raising her voice in frustration. Despite this, Linda did end up going on a 10-day trip abroad, which I assumed Kevin managed to fund somehow. Upon her return, she called me, brimming with excitement. "I'm back, and it was so fun." She excitedly shared tales of her sightseeing and dining adventures. "Though I hadn't asked, and I overbought souvenirs. I could have fit them in my suitcase if I had them shipped here. Can't wait for them to arrive," she exclaimed. "That's nice," I replied, trying to keep my tone neutral despite feeling a bit overwhelmed. "Thanks to the money you saved up, I had a blast," she exclaimed. "Saved up money? What are you talking about?" I responded, puzzled and a bit alarmed, having no recollection of setting aside money for her splurge. "I found it in your house's sideboard drawer," Linda said, claiming she took $30,000. I was stunned. Why would such a large amount of cash be stashed away at home, especially not in a drawer where anyone could find it? Confused, I confronted her. "I'm not sure what money you're talking about, but taking it from our house without permission is theft, even if you're family. Do you understand that?" I asked. Linda's response was unsettlingly casual. "That's why I'm telling you now. I used it. Consider it a post-factum report," she declared unapologetically. "I have no idea about this money, but if you took it and used it without telling anyone, that's a crime. And if it was something Kevin had set aside for an important transaction, it's even more serious," I explained, trying to make sense of the situation. Despite this, there hadn't been any noticeable disruptions in our business finances during her trip. "You two live so extravagantly, so why can't I have a little of that? Think of it as doing a favor for your parent. It's not a big deal, right?" she rationalized, showing a sense of entitlement that was hard to comprehend. "It's one thing to ask for help from your son and his wife, but this is not how you should behave after taking someone else's money," I replied, still in disbelief. "I'm glad you enjoyed your trip. I'll have to discuss this with Kevin when he returns," I continued. "Kevin will understand. After all, I'm his only mother, and $30,000 isn't much to him," she assumed. "All right, I'll pass the message along," I said, astounded by her lack of awareness. Later that evening, when Kevin came home, he looked troubled. "Mary, do you know about the money?" "I left it in the drawer," he asked urgently. 15 days ago, I withdrew it from my bank account, and now it's gone. Keeping such a large sum in a drawer, didn't you think it was careless?" he questioned. "I needed cash immediately for an urgent payment. Do you know anything about it?" It suddenly clicked. Linda's earlier call, thanking me for the $30,000 and mentioning how much fun she had, made sense now. It was Kevin's money, meant for a crucial purpose. "Kevin, today," Linda called, thanking us for the $30,000 and saying she had a blast with it. I didn't understand what she meant until now. I explained, piecing everything together. So it was Kevin's money, but what was such a large amount meant for? I asked. Hey, if it wasn't for a business payment, we've been doing bank transfers for a long time, right? Why cash all of a sudden? I questioned, trying to understand the whole scenario while dealing with the ramifications of Linda's actions. I was aware it was Kevin's money that had disappeared, but the full context was still unclear to me. Linda, it turned out, had taken the money without informing us, and I needed to understand why. I asked Kevin, puzzled by the situation. Kevin began to unravel the backstory. After he had reduced the credit limit on Linda's card, she started secretly borrowing money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she had opened without our knowledge. When Kevin discovered her growing debt, he took away all her cards and withdrew cash to settle her debts directly, aiming to bypass the banking system to keep our business accounts clean and maintain trust with our partners. This was also partly a farewell gesture as we're moving abroad and won't be around to manage such issues for her, Kevin explained. I plan to handle her debts discreetly to prevent our financial records from getting complicated. A month had passed since then, and as I was busy packing for our move, Linda's frequent calls became hard to ignore. When I finally took her call, her voice was tinged with desperation. Why aren't you answering my calls? I've called so many times, she said, almost in tears. I'm sorry, Linda. I've been caught up with the move. What's going on? I asked, trying to remain calm and give her a chance to explain her side. It's not just one thing, it's everything. They're asking for payments almost every day. It's too much, Linda confessed, her voice cracking under the strain. Have you tried contacting Kevin about this? I inquired, hoping she had sought his help first. He seems to be blocking my calls. I can't get through to him at all, Mary. You're my only hope now. Please help me, she pleaded. I realized then just how complex the situation had become. Linda's financial recklessness had led her into a labyrinth of debt, and now, isolated from Kevin's assistance, she was turning to me as her last resort. As we prepared to start anew in a foreign country, the challenges of dealing with Linda's financial chaos loomed large, demanding immediate attention before we could fully focus on our new beginnings. I was taken aback by Kevin's drastic approach toward his own mother. If he had used the prepared funds to directly settle Linda's debts, this distressing situation might have been avoided. Instead, Linda was now overwhelmed with collection letters and relentless calls from finance companies and consumer lenders. It was a scene reminiscent of something from a dramatic film, one I had never expected to witness in real life. I'll talk to Kevin, but I can't guarantee what he'll do. A son should help his mother in trouble, right? Please ask him for me, Linda pleaded at the end of our conversation. However, with our impending business expansion and our financial resources already stretched thin, we couldn't afford to further assist Linda, especially given that she had misused the money meant to settle her debts. When I relayed the details of the call to Kevin upon his return home, he responded with a mixture of fatigue and resignation. I had planned to sort things out before we left, but she squandered that chance herself, he said coldly. Indeed, the money was originally earmarked to clear Linda's debts, but she had instead blown it on a lavish trip, leaving no room for excuses. As Linda's calls persisted, I followed Kevin's lead and set her number to block, although part of me wished to help her. After all, she was Kevin's mother, but there was nothing I could do if he had chosen to detach from the situation. Meanwhile, the day of our move overseas was quickly approaching, and I still had a lot to pack. Amid the chaos of packing, I discovered another troubling piece of news. Linda had resorted to selling her house to manage her debts. It turned out she had concealed even more liabilities than we knew. The total amount was so substantial that even after selling her property, she couldn't cover it all. The thought of losing the family home where Kevin had grown up was profoundly upsetting. Hey, our family home is gone. Are you okay with that? I asked, sensing his sadness. How can I be okay, but there's nothing we can do, Kevin replied, his voice tinged with sorrow. Losing the house where he grew up must have felt like a great loss, akin to how I felt when I lost my parents' house early in life. In the midst of these complex feelings and the heavy task of packing, we had to come to terms with the fact that some situations were beyond our control and focus on our future. As we prepared to start anew in a different country, the bittersweet reality of losing a family home struck me deeply. I observed the situation unfolding with Kevin, Unlike my past experiences, Kevin had not only lost the tangible structure where his earliest memories were formed, but also his emotional sanctuary. All this while his mother, Linda, is still alive. It's an indescribable feeling, the mixture of loss and displacement, especially under such painful circumstances, I thought. The impact is profound and complex, far more than mere bricks and mortar. It's about losing a part of one's history and the comfort of a place to return to that no longer exists. Linda, now residing in a modest apartment, faces the daily grind of managing her debts. She works part-time, a challenging reality given her age. Employment opportunities for the elderly are not just limited, they're often physically demanding and less rewarding. This stark new reality for her is a drastic shift from her previous life, believed to be filled with unchecked spending and financial freedom. Though sympathy naturally arises seeing her struggle, it's tempered by the knowledge that her situation is the direct result of her own financial imprudence. Life teaches us that actions have consequences, and Linda's case reaffirms the harsh truth that financial responsibility is crucial at any age. Back in our new environment, the business is thriving beyond our initial expectations. The move overseas has catapulted our brand into the international spotlight, bringing in a flurry of inquiries and offers from various corners of the globe. Every new email and call brings potential for expansion and collaboration, which is incredibly exciting but also immensely demanding. The success is exhilarating, however, it envelopes our entire lives, leaving little room for anything else. Days blend into nights as we navigate time zones and cultural nuances, striving to make the most of this golden opportunity. Despite the professional achievements, our personal lives bear the weight of our relentless schedules. The dream of expanding our family seems more like a distant vision, something we hope to circle back to when the waves of immediate demand subside. Kevin, who juggles multiple roles from logistics to client management, feels this strain acutely. As partners in both life and business, we find ourselves pondering the future and our priorities, wondering how we can align our professional goals with our personal desires. As I look out of our apartment window, taking in the view of the far landscape, the neon lights blur into the night, mirroring the blur of our daily lives. It's a view filled with promise and anonymity. A stark contrast to the familiar streets we once knew. This city, vibrant and relentless, is now our home, yet it starkly contrasts with the quiet, steady life we left behind. The complexity of our new life is exciting but also daunting, filled with endless tasks and decisions that challenge us at every turn. Navigating this new chapter, I often find myself reflecting on Linda's situation and the broader implications of our familial and financial decisions. It's a continuous learning curve, understanding how deeply intertwined our choices are with the fabric of our lives. Each decision, each sacrifice, and each success shapes not just our immediate circumstances but also the legacy we leave behind. As we build this new phase of our life, we remain mindful of the delicate balance between achieving success and maintaining the relationships that define who we are beyond our business achievements. Shut your trap, you old hack. Women like you should learn to keep your mouth shut. My sister-in-law spat venomously, her words piercing the air like barbed arrows. I stood frozen, aghast at the unprecedented display of aggression. Never before had I witnessed such crude language and physical intimidation from a woman, let alone from someone within my own family circle. She gripped my collar with a force that mirrored a man's, sending shivers down my spine. I had harbored hopes that marriage would mellow her fiery temperament, but alas, it seemed her volatile nature persisted. My name is Helen, a 35-year-old homemaker. Since tying the knot 5 years ago, my husband Chris and I have been residing with my in-laws. Despite the challenges, they were kind souls, offering support with household chores while I juggled a job. Chris, my partner in life and age, alongside my father-in-law, were pillars of strength in our family unit, staying united through thick and thin. We decided to follow the path our parents had trodden, opting to live under the same roof as my in-laws, just as they had done. The idea was floated by our elders, suggesting it as a viable arrangement. While I understood that many women might balk at the idea of cohabiting with their in-laws, I found solace in the familiarity of a bustling household. Having grown up in a family of 12, the notion of solitary living seemed alien and disconcerting to me. Thus, when the proposal was put forth, I embraced it with genuine contentment. My in-laws were amiable folks, and I cherished the idea of perpetuating our harmonious coexistence. However, our domestic tranquility was abruptly shattered by a somber incident. my mother-in-law suffered a grievous injury outdoors, necessitating hospitalization. A heart attack had seized her as she descended a flight of stairs, causing her to tumble. Her physical agony was compounded by the frailty wrought by her heart condition. In light of these circumstances, I made the decision to resign from my job, assuming the role of a full-time homemaker. Balancing visits to the hospital with household duties, I found solace in the unwavering support of my father-in-law and Chris. Amidst the chaos, the return of my sister-in-law Sarah added another layer of complexity to our family dynamic. Sarah had long been the proverbial black sheep, casting shadows over our family harmony. At 33 years old, Sarah now divides her time between part-time employment at a clothing store and purported night shifts elsewhere. Prior to our marriage, my father-in-law had extended an offer to her: "If life becomes too burdensome, you're welcome to live with us." Yet she staunchly declined, citing a desire for independence. "I value my freedom too much to live under someone else's roof," she retorted, much to the chagrin of my in-laws. Sarah's penchant for irresponsibility had long troubled them, a trait that manifested early on during her school years. She was no stranger to conflict, often clashing with teachers and causing distress for my mother-in-law. Her tumultuous journey continued into college, marked by disputes with peers and even entanglements in extramarital affairs, much to the dismay of those around her. Despite my mother-in-law's assertions of Sarah's inherent honesty and kindness, her outward appearance, characterized by natural blonde locks and undeniable attractiveness, had been a source of adversity. Stereotypical biases against blonde women cast shadows over her academic endeavors, exacerbating her challenges. That's where it all began. The seeds of disillusionment sown deep within Sarah, particularly during her tumultuous years in middle school. The atmosphere was oppressive. Despite her innocence, her teachers cast judgmental gazes upon her, fostering a sense of unwarranted scrutiny. Feeling unjustly targeted, Sarah's demeanor and academic performance gradually deteriorated. I empathized with her plight, having experienced similar rigidity during my own schooling. A close friend with natural blonde hair had faced similar challenges, prompting me to advocate vehemently against such prejudiced treatment. Over time, my defiance softened the resolve of even the most obstinate educators. Recognizing Sarah's wounded spirit, I had hoped our family home would offer respite from the world's harsh judgments. Knowing her concerns for her ailing mother, I extended an invitation for her to accompany me to the hospital. Yet my optimism was swiftly dashed upon Sarah's arrival. Without a word of greeting, she appraised me with a disdainful glance, remarking, "Ah, you must be the housekeeper. I could use some tea." Instantly my father-in-law's ire was kindled, his voice rising in indignation. Sarah's apology to me, Helen, rang hollow against her subsequent disparaging remarks. "She's Chris's wife, not the hired help. Understood? And she's perfectly lovely in her own right," my father-in-law retorted, his disappointment palpable. The venom in Sarah's words, casting aspersions on my appearance and Chris's judgment, served as a stark reminder of the deep-seated animosity festering within her. Despite the rising tide of anger within me, I made a conscious choice to respond with maturity, offering Sarah a warm smile. "Hello, Sarah. It's Helen, Chris's wife. Remember meeting at our wedding?" "Ah, yes, weddings are magical, aren't they? They have a way of making even someone like you look somewhat presentable." My father-in-law's caustic remark reverberated across the room. "Sarah, that's enough." Chris's voice, tinged with surprise, cut through the tension as he descended from the second floor. It was evident he too had endured his fair share of clashes with Sarah in the past. Before Chris and I tied the knot, he had lent her money, a debt she not only failed to repay but also arrogantly dismissed his concerns with the assertion, "Listen to your sister because you're my brother." Since then, they had been locked in a silent battle of wills, exchanging glares whenever in proximity. Undeterred by the palpable discord, Sarah persisted in her disrespectful demeanor. Without so much as a word of inquiry about her mother's well-being, she proceeded to bark orders at me. "Hey, you there, make some tea pronto. And fetch some snacks while you're at it. When I'm ready to emerge, everything better be laid out. Understood?" The icy stare of disapproval from Chris was all the response she garnered. "Helen isn't a housekeeper. If you persist with such disrespect, you'll be asked to leave." My father-in-law's voice resonated with authority. "Aren't you supposed to be concerned about Mom? She's in the hospital, isn't she? Shouldn't you trust the doctors to care for her?" How can you truly grasp the extent of her suffering, the severity of her illness, or the nature of her injury if you refuse to even visit her? Mom has always worried about you, Sarah. Wouldn't it be a comfort for her to see your face, filled with life and warmth? With a resigned sigh, Sarah retorted, I have no interest in the woman who gave birth to me, especially not because she's blonde. My father-in-law rose abruptly, his voice thundering, Your mother is not to blame. Do you have any idea how many times she has cleaned up after you, how much love she has poured into you? Have you ever considered my feelings? No one understands the pain of being whispered about, of being judged from a young age. I shouldn't have even bothered coming. I came here to discuss engagement, and now I'm thoroughly irritated. Sarah's demeanor froze, as if she were trapped in a perpetual state of rebellion. As Sarah made her way toward the front door, intent on departure, I hurried after her. Congratulations on your engagement, Sarah, I called out, hoping to bridge the growing chasm between us. Ignoring my attempt at civility, she pressed on, eager to escape the confrontation. Yet I refused to let her slip away without one final plea. Are you truly not going to visit your mother? I implored, hoping to stir some semblance of family responsibility within her. To my surprise, Sarah halted in her tracks, her expression a mix of annoyance and disdain. You're so irritating. I came here to discuss my engagement to a wealthy man, she retorted sharply. Understanding dawned upon me, and I offered a heartfelt apology. I see. I'm sorry for intruding. It's wonderful that you found someone special. But remember, a person's worth isn't determined by their occupation. Whether they save lives, provide livelihoods, or nurture families, every job holds value in our society. Your father and Chris are your family. Don't belittle them for their choices. As the words left my lips, Sarah's countenance twisted with unmistakable hatred, her eyes burning with resentment as she glared at me. Before I could react, Sarah seized me by the collar, sending a shockwave of fear coursing through my body like an electric current. Shut your trap, you old bag. Housekeepers like you should learn to keep quiet. Her words pierced through me, leaving me trembling with terror. My heart constricted painfully in my chest, rendering me speechless with fear. I struggled to vocalize my distress, but my voice failed me, drowned out by the overwhelming sense of dread. As Sarah's grip loosened, a wave of relief washed over me, allowing me to draw a shaky breath. I'm bringing my fiancé over next week. Make yourself scarce and act like a proper housekeeper. Understood? Sarah's parting words were delivered with venom, punctuated by the resounding slam of the door. I clung to the hope that her aggression would subside once she was married. It was a comforting thought, albeit tinged with uncertainty. 3 days later, a momentous event unfolded. While strolling through the neighborhood on a routine shopping trip, I stumbled upon a scene that tugged at my heartstrings. In the park, a young girl, on the cusp of starting elementary school, sat hunched over, her tear-streaked face buried in her hands. What's the matter, sweetie? I inquired gently, concern etched into my voice. I lost my mom, she whimpered in response, her distress palpable. Drawing upon my own childhood antics, I recalled the countless times I had inadvertently wandered away from my parents' watchful gaze, only to be swiftly reunited with the help of my vigilant siblings. Where were you when you got separated? I asked, my tone soft and reassuring. I don't know, she admitted, her voice tinged with uncertainty. After learning her name, I gently took her hand and began calling out loudly for her mother as we traversed the park. Fortunately, our search yielded swift results, and we soon located the distressed parent. With tears of gratitude shimmering in her eyes, the woman profusely thanked me for my assistance. Upon closer inspection, I realized she was none other than an old classmate from my school days. Emma, is that you? I exclaimed in disbelief. Wait, are you Helen Wilson? She replied, her tone mirroring my astonishment. That's my maiden name, I confirmed, a flood of memories rushing back at the sound of her voice. I can't believe it's you, Emma. I'm sincerely sorry for the trouble, I apologize, feeling a pang of guilt for the inconvenience caused. My daughter was chasing after a bird, and I lost sight of her. Thank you so much for helping us reunite, Emma explained, her voice tinged with relief. After sharing a hearty laugh, Emma and I couldn't shake the feeling that our chance encounter was more than mere coincidence. We exchanged contact details, pledging to catch up over coffee sometime soon. Although we had been classmates, we hadn't mingled much due to differing social circles. Yet, as adults, I sensed a missed opportunity for a potential friendship blossoming between us. The following day, I met Emma at a quaint cafe, Like me, she was a devoted housewife, her daughter currently navigating the realms of kindergarten. As we delved into conversations about our shared past and recent happenings, the hours slipped away effortlessly. However, when the topic of marriage arose, a flicker of concern crossed my features. My older brother is finally tying the knot, but I can't help feeling apprehensive. The woman he's marrying had quite a reputation as a troublemaker in our neighborhood. I confessed, a hint of worry lacing my words. Perhaps she's turned over a new leaf. If your brother sees something in her worth marrying, let's hope for the best, Emma offered reassuringly. Then, with a mischievous twinkle in her eye, she dropped a bombshell. By the way, did you know that my brother had a crush on you, Helen? I was taken aback, my mind reeling with surprise. What? But we weren't even in the same grade, were we? I exclaimed, my mind racing to reconcile Emma's revelation. You were quite the catch, Helen. You had everyone swooning over you. Did you know that even the guy I had a crush on wasn't you? Emma disclosed his name, triggering a faint memory of his face, though I had never realized his feelings for me. I admit I may have felt a twinge of envy toward you back then, but it's all water under the bridge now. I'm glad I finally spilled the beans, she chuckled, a sense of relief evident in her demeanor. Well, this certainly complicates things. I always assumed the popular Helen would end up with the mature Chris. I mused, Emma's words prompting a trip down memory lane. Chris and I were indeed classmates, but like with Emma, we never really crossed paths. He was little more than a familiar face to me. However, at our reunion a decade ago, Chris confessed, I've had a crush on you since we were kids. That's when I realized I wanted no one else but Chris. And here we are, happily married, I concluded with a smile, grateful for the twists and turns that led us to where we are today. Soon, it was time for Emma to collect her daughter, signaling the end of our tea time together. Later, during my visit to the hospital to see my mother-in-law, the topic of Sarah naturally arose. Concern etched across her face, my mother-in-law insisted I must be discharged immediately, attempting to mobilize despite her frail condition. Since Chris is away on a business trip today, my father-in-law and I will take charge. We'll ensure Sarah's partner undergoes thorough scrutiny in place of my mother-in-law, I assured her firmly, prompting a chuckle from her. Witnessing her resilience, I resolved to tackle the impending marriage introduction with renewed determination. Come Saturday, Sarah arrived with her fiancé in tow. As memories of last week's altercation with Sarah flashed through my mind, a tremor of apprehension coursed through me. Nevertheless, I summoned my resolve and greeted them with a forced smile. Sarah's fiancé, a burly figure with a commanding presence, seemed taken aback upon seeing me, though the reason eluded me. Inviting them inside, my father-in-law and I exchanged pleasantries with Sarah's fiancé in the living room. However, as I busied myself boiling water, the exchange between my father-in-law, Sarah, and her fiancé unfolded in the living room. Regrettably, I missed catching his name amidst my tasks. Upon my return with the tea, I resolved to properly greet him. However, as I set the cups on the table, Sarah's taunting smirk caught me off guard. Isn't it amusing to have this woman as our housemate? She's essentially working for us, free of charge. Quite the joke, don't you think? Sarah's words sliced through the air, stinging with disdain. To hear such disparagement during our marriage introduction was beyond comprehension. Sarah's audacity left me speechless, though my indignation simmered beneath the surface. Thankfully, my father-in-law wasted no time in reprimanding Sarah. Sarah, that's enough, he admonished sternly. Attempting to diffuse the tension, Mike interjected with a gentle tone. I apologize. Sarah, why do you refer to her as a housemaid? Despite his outward calm, Mike's disapproval was palpable as he fixed Sarah with a stern gaze. Unfazed, Sarah continued her tirade. Well, that's precisely what she is, isn't it? Just look at her, hair tied back in a simple knot, wearing cheap clothes and an outdated apron, and don't even get me started on her makeup. I bet it's all bargain bin brands. She hasn't changed a bit since the last time I saw her. It's as if she's given up on herself, content to blend into the background like some forgotten woman. My father-in-law seemed on the verge of erupting into a full-fledged outburst, while Mike appeared visibly shaken, his complexion draining of color. Don't you realize we attended the same grade school? He interjected, his voice tinged with disbelief. When Sarah was in 7th grade, she should have been in 9th. I assumed everyone in the neighborhood knew that. My father-in-law's response was tinged with regret. It appears my daughter's interests lie primarily with herself. I apologize, he conceded, leaving both Sarah and me perplexed. unable to grasp the context of their cryptic exchange. Attempting to clear the air, I turned to Mike, seeking clarification. Do you happen to know who I am? I inquired, prompting a smile from him. My apologies for the delayed introduction. You were Helen Wilson before marriage, correct? I'm Mike. My sister recently mentioned meeting you. Oh, and Emma, your sister, mentioned her brother's impending marriage. I never imagined it would be with Sarah, I exclaimed, my astonishment evident in my voice, perhaps a touch too loud. Curiosity piqued, I pressed further. What did you mean by people in the neighborhood knowing about me? Is it because I come from a large family? Mike chuckled at my inquiry. There are numerous reasons, he replied cryptically. Didn't you know, Mrs. Wilson, you were quite the local legend. Not only were you charming, but you also stood up to the toughest teachers, earning their respect. You served as student council president in both middle and high school, and rumor has it, you turned down over 300 suitors. That's just scratching the surface of your reputation. As Mike's words sunk in, a flush of embarrassment crept up my neck, surely turning my cheeks a bright shade of crimson. Oh, come on, that's an exaggeration, I protested, attempting to downplay my supposed achievements. Sure, I come from a large family, but I hardly did anything remarkable in school. And as for rejecting suitors, it's more like 5, not 300. Actually, Mike interjected, my sister mentioned how you stood up for a classmate with naturally blonde hair, challenging the prejudice against them. Your actions may not have instantly changed attitudes, but they certainly made an impact. Sarah's sharp retort cut through the air. But weren't Helen and I in different schools? I always felt like an outcast, she countered, her voice tinged with bitterness. My father-in-law intervened, gently guiding the conversation back on track. Sarah, Helen attended the same school as you, he clarified. Despite the gradual shift in attitudes towards blonde-haired students, your decision to dye your hair various colors only exacerbated tensions with the teachers. His words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of the choices that had shaped our respective paths. Sarah's expression morphed from shock to a disturbing grin. She processed the implications of her actions. So, if I hadn't dyed my hair, blonde would have been acceptable, she mused aloud, a hint of incredulity in her voice. However, her demeanor quickly darkened as she redirected her attention to me, her tone dripping with condescension. Helen, despite your vibrant school days, look at you now, a mere housewife, devoid of any sense of style, Sarah taunted, her words laced with disdain. Taking care of your mother-in-law and managing household chores must be quite the burden. You may have had your glory days, but now, there's nothing to boast about. This is what happens when you settle for an office worker like my brother. It's quite pitiful, really. Where he is, look at me, I'm the real winner, she crowed, punctuating her diatribe with a mocking laugh. Before my father-in-law could interject, I spoke up, determined to assert myself. That's merely your perspective, isn't it? I countered calmly. I find immense joy and fulfillment in my current life. I'm surrounded by a loving husband and supportive in-laws. Yes, caring for my mother-in-law while she's in the hospital can be challenging, but it's a responsibility I gladly shoulder. I am committed to ensuring her well-being, even beyond my own share. Ultimately, her health and happiness are what truly matter. Sarah's demeanor softened as she averted her gaze. Truth be told, fashion doesn't interest me, she admitted quietly. Sure, dressing up might please my husband, but beyond that, it serves little purpose. As long as we have enough to get by, I'm content. Back when I lived with my parents, we were barely scraping by. I still remember the cramped quarters shared among the 12 of us. Compared to those days, our current situation feels like paradise. Mike stood a little taller, addressing my father-in-law with sincerity. Sir, I must apologize. Originally, I came here to seek your daughter's hand in marriage. However, after hearing Sarah's sentiments, I've come to the conclusion that I am not suited to be her husband. Please forgive my abrupt change of heart. My father-in-law's response was measured yet understanding. Given the circumstances, it's evident that not many would be keen on marrying Sarah, he acknowledged. I will protest if you choose to call off the engagement. Please accept my sincerest apologies for any inconvenience caused. Mike offered another apology before rising from his seat. Sarah, who had remained tense throughout, suddenly sprung into action, seizing onto Mike's leg. Hold on a minute, you're the one who proposed, aren't you? She exclaimed, her voice trembling with desperation. How can you speak of calling off our marriage so casually? I won't tolerate living with someone who demeans my brother's wife and ridicules her in our own home. My family consists of my brother, his wife, and my sister, and I refuse to let them be hurt by your behavior. Rest assured, I'll treat your family with kindness. That's a given." In response, Mike's tone hardened. "So, you tailor your behavior based on others' status? You look down on those you consider beneath you and fawn over those you perceive as superior," he accused, his disappointment palpable. "I regret not seeing this side of you sooner, but now that I know, I can't continue to love you. Please release my leg if you understand," he implored gently. With those words, Sarah relinquished her grip, sinking to her knees as tears streamed down her face, overcome with emotion. My father-in-law and I left Sarah to her emotions and escorted Mike out. Following that incident, Sarah decided to move out of the house once again. Historically, whenever she encountered financial hardships, she turned to my father-in-law for support, and he'd rarely assist her. However, given her recent disrespect towards my mother-in-law and her treatment of me as a mere maid, he made the difficult decision. My father-in-law made a firm decision not to extend any financial assistance to Sarah, regardless of her pleas. It appears Sarah now works in a clothing store, seemingly having outgrown her previous ventures into night work. However, her job doesn't seem to provide the means for her desired designer purchases, leaving her in a tough spot. Her blatant pursuit of money has left her with few allies willing to lend a hand. After being deserted by Mike and met with cold indifference from my father-in-law, Sarah sought solace from my mother-in-law. It's disheartening to witness how she resorted to tears and manipulation, attempting to elicit sympathy and financial aid from the ailing woman. Despite her own health concerns, my mother-in-law was moved by Sarah's display, but she ultimately made the difficult choice to sever ties with her. Since then, Sarah has vanished from our lives. Following my mother-in-law's discharge from the hospital, I became her constant companion, offering support as she adjusted to using a walking stick. Determined to make her daily life more manageable, I began seeking out ways to streamline household chores, ensuring her comfort and well-being. As my efforts to assist my mother-in-law gained recognition from my in-laws and Chris, expressions of gratitude flowed freely. "I should be the one thanking all of you. Your support has been invaluable to me," I humbly responded, met with warm smiles from all around. Their appreciation brought me immense joy, fueling my sense of fulfillment. Maintaining regular contact with Emma, our occasional coffee outings provided moments of respite amidst the daily routines. However, the most significant news came when I discovered I was pregnant. The excitement and joy reverberated throughout the family, with my parents and siblings joining in the celebrations. I'm truly grateful for the outpouring of love and support from everyone. While I know the journey of childbirth and raising a child will present challenges, I am eager to embrace each moment with gratitude and cherish every precious memory, I reflected, filled with anticipation for the journey ahead.